Chapter 411. Qin Yining was very surprised. Actually, she still had some doubts about Jiziyu. She didn't know what the relationship between Pang Xiao and Jiziyu was. She just felt that it was impossible to be completely untainted in the imperial court. Therefore, Jiziyu and Pang Xiao used each other and tested each other. Qin Yining didn't know how much of it was true. Jiziyu was originally a cold and arrogant person. He didn't easily express his thoughts. She had to guess what he was thinking. In addition, the assassination attempt on her way to the Zhou gave Qin Yining some preconceived notions about Jiziyu. She knew that he was a ruthless person. Therefore, Qin Yining was very surprised that Jiziyu personally came to the family Qin to ask her this question before her wedding with Pang Xiao. Was he sincere or was he testing her? Qin Yining's beautiful eyes met Jiziyu's beautiful peach blossom eyes. She only saw sincerity in his eyes. She didn't see any scheming. At this moment, Qin Yining was almost certain that Jiziyu's mood when he asked these questions wasn't scheming, but deep concern. Perhaps this was the friendship between men. It was just like Bingtang. If they wanted to get married, she would choose her partner carefully. She was afraid that they would meet someone cruel and unscrupulous. She was afraid that they wouldn't have a good life. Jiziyu was probably also afraid that Pang Xiao wouldn't have a good life after getting married, right? It seemed that even though Jiziyu used Pang Xiao in the past, their brotherly relationship was serious. Qin Yining was also kind to people who were kind to Pang Xiao. She put away her grudges and wariness and said with a smile, "Women are different from men. Men can have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but women have to be faithful to one. No matter how many grudges we had in the past, from the day your majesty decreed our marriage, my life has been tied to Wang Ye's. If he lives, I will live. If anything happens to him, I won't live either. This is not only because of the love and hatred between the two families, but also because we are now a family and can only be a family. I'm good to him and sincerely support him. That's for the sake of our future. It's not just for Wang Yi, and it's not just for me. My future is tied to him. I can only be stable if he is stable. His future is my future. Prince Consort Ji is a smart person. I believe you should already understand what I've said." Qin Yining couldn't directly tell Jiziyu that she and Pang Xiao loved each other to death. Your Majesty's decree of marriage was exactly what she wanted. Because even if she trusted Jiziyu, she didn't know if your Majesty's spies would know what she said. But she had already expressed her intentions so clearly. Sheath and Pang Xiao had a future together. How could she hurt him? Jiziyu looked at Qin Yining. A faint smile slowly appeared on his handsome face, which was usually expressionless to outsiders. The smile was very faint, and the corners of his lips were slightly curved. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't have noticed that he was smiling just now. "I understand. I hope you remember what you said today." In Qin Yining's ears, this sentence was both a request and a threat. But she wasn't angry at all, because she knew that Jiziyu was doing this for Pang Xiao. Qin Yining nodded solemnly. "Okay." As the two of them spoke, White Cloud came over and rubbed its head against Qin Yining's cheek. Jiziyu was a little surprised. He looked at White Cloud with a complicated expression and used his hand to stroke its mane. "This is the horse he gave you. I'll return it to you. Remember to pass the reins to Qin Yining." Qin Yining smiled and shook his head. He took a step back and said, "It's a good horse. A horse's nature is to have a vast world for it to run in. Although I like it, it can only stay in the stable if it stays by my side. Even if I give it good food and take care of it, it still won't be happy. It might even erase its nature. It's more suitable for it to stay with you." Jiziyu slowly tightened his grip on the reins. His heart skipped a beat, and many complicated emotions flashed through his mind. But when he saw Qin Yining's smiling face, he felt relieved. Perhaps Pang Zhishi was right. "You're a good girl." Qin Yining had already mentally prepared himself for Jiziyu to treat her coldly, but she didn't expect him to say this. Qin Yining was very satisfied to receive the affirmation of Pang Zhao's good friend. "Thank you. You're also a good brother." Jiziyu was stunned. Then, he smiled and shook his head. He muttered, "Good brother?" Then, He lightly leaped onto a white cloud and shook the reins. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he urged White Cloud to leave the family Qin. Qin Yining looked at his back. After a while, he smiled slightly and turned to return to the residence. Percent, the wedding preparations were in full swing. Because Your Majesty issued the edict in a hurry, both sides were a little flustered. Fortunately, they didn't lack manpower, and they also didn't lack friends who wanted to curry favor with them. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 10th of May. Everything had been taken care of. Early in the morning, Pang Xiao had already made the Jinghu Wei anxious. The 18 people she chose were the youngest, most handsome, and most outstanding among the Jinghu Wei. In fact, because they were beautiful and could personally accompany Wang Yi to deliver the betrothal gifts, these 18 people were very proud. This made the other Jinghu Wei brothers very jealous. Dai Fu, don't be anxious. You must be polite to your in-laws. Do you hear me? Retract that aura of yours. You're someone who has killed enemies on the battlefield. If your hands are stained with blood, your aura will be heavy. Don't let the in-laws think that you're snatching the bride. Do you understand? Madame Ma nagged as she helped Pang Xiao straighten the lapels of his light purple robe. I understand, grandmother. Don't worry. Don't worry? How can I not worry? Look at what kind of people you've gathered outside. Those who know you're going to rush the makeup, but those who don't know will think that you're going to fight with the in-laws. Madame Ma glanced at the open carved window and the 18 men standing in the courtyard in their military uniforms. She felt rather vexed. Let me tell you, don't mess it up. Do you understand? If you dare mess it up, I'll beat you to death with my shoe. Mother, all right. You should let Dai Fu go first. Don't delay the auspicious time. Didn't Dai Fu say that he invited Prince Consort Ji? He should be here by now. In the end, it was the Yao clan who grabbed Madame Ma's arm and rescued their son. Pang Xiao secretly sighed in relief. He tugged at the cuffs of his arrow sleeves, laughed heartily, and turned to leave quickly. Yao Qinggu, who had been sitting on the side smoking, walked to the window and watched Pang Xiao leave with the 18 dignified young men. He shook his head and couldn't help but laugh. This kid. Pang Xiao led the people out of the inner residence. When they arrived at the main courtyard, they saw that the 210 sets of betrothal gifts were all adorned with red silk flowers. The servants carrying the dowry had already prepared everything. Chapter 412. You're here. Pang Xiao smiled as he walked towards Jiziyu. I rarely see you in this color. I'm used to seeing you in either red or white. Jiziyu said expressionlessly. I'm afraid that I'll steal your limelight. Pang Xiao choked, then laughed loudly. Isn't that so? Alan is so handsome. If I'm compared to a pig or a dog, wouldn't I lose face? That's why. Jiziyu shrugged. Pang Xiao couldn't help but laugh again. The soldiers of the Prince Consort's residence were all brothers of the Tiger Army who had followed Pang Xiao through fire and water. Although their commander had changed, their admiration and love for Pang Xiao hadn't changed at all. Seeing Pang Xiao looking over, these soldiers stood even straighter. Pang Xiao smiled and said, Today I'll have to trouble you to follow this king. Yes. 88 soldiers answered in unison. It could be said that they were filled with killing intent. Their roars shook the sky, forcing the beautiful front yard of the Prince Consort's residence to be filled with killing intent. This sound caused the 18 Jinghu Wei soldiers to stand even straighter. Yao Qinggu, Ma Shi, and Yao clan who had followed the sound were also stunned by the imposing manner, as if they were about to go into battle to kill the enemy. After a long while, Ma Shi frowned and said in a low voice, What are they doing? No, I have to go talk to the Dai Fu. If they go to the in-laws' house like this, they'll be frightened. Don't worry. Yao Qinggu pulled Ma Shi back and said with a smile, The child isn't a baby anymore. He has his own plans. You don't have to blindly interfere. How can I not worry? Which family would rush the bride's dowry like this? Bringing a group of thugs. Are they rushing the bride's dowry or raiding the family? Mother, don't say too much. Yao Shi held Ma Shi's arm and shook it. She frowned at Ma Shi's inauspicious words. Madame Ma also knew that she had misspoken and hurriedly spat 3 times. At this moment, Pang Xiao and Jiziyu had already mounted their horses and were heading out of the mansion. Then there was the betrothal gift of 210 sets, and finally 106 young soldiers with neat military uniforms. The group of people headed towards the Qin clan in a grandiose manner. Madame Ma and the Yao clan chased after them. When they saw the end of the long line turn the corner, they sighed at the same time. Mrs. Ma was not the only one who was worried. Now, even the Yao clan felt that it was a little scary for their son to bring this group of people to speed up the makeup process. While Qin Yining was teaching Lian Xiaozhou how to read, Bing Tang ran in from outside. Miss, Wang Ye's makeup team is here," Qin Yining said in surprise. "So early?" "Yes, and the team is especially spectacular." Bing Tang laughed uncontrollably. "How is it spectacular?" If the Sun Clan hadn't come to her early this morning and told her that she couldn't go out and see the groom before the wedding, she really wanted to go out and see how spectacular it was. Bing Tang thought about the shocked expressions of the neighbors and couldn't help but laugh. Wang Yi and Prince Consort Ji brought troops to rush your dowry. The first one is a phoenix coronet and robe for you. The golden phoenix on the coronet has bright red gems in its mouth. Then there are 2 small yellow croakers, followed by 2 red coral ornaments. After that, there are 2 betrothal gifts. This servant didn't see clearly, but they are all treasures. It is said that there are 210 of them. The head of the procession has already entered our mansion, but the tail is still 2 streets away. Qin Yining thought about that scene and couldn't help but laugh. She naturally knew that Pang Xiao loved her, and she didn't care about material things or money. However, she was touched that Pang Xiao was willing to spend so much money to promote their wedding. Qin Yining was touched, but the Dowager Duchess and the others were already blinded by the practical betrothal gifts. Qin Huayan, on the other hand, was calm as he watched the 2 handsome and noble young men, Pang Xiao and Jiziyu, ride over on tall horses. The young men behind them were all carefully selected. Qin Huayuan understood Pang Xiao's intentions and was naturally very happy. Pang Xiao dismounted from his horse and presented the list of betrothal gifts with both hands. Qin Huayuan didn't even look at it, as he casually handed the list of betrothal gifts to the Sun Clan. Then he smiled and greeted Jiziyu. This old man is truly grateful that Prince Consort Ji is willing to come and help. Jiziyu knew that today was Pang Xiao's day to rush her makeup. Although he didn't like Qin Huayuan in his heart, he still put on a proper appearance and politely returned the greeting. He even said in an unprecedentedly gentle manner, "Lord Qin, you don't have to be so polite. Wang Yi and I are good friends, so I naturally have to help." Qin Huayuan was a little surprised, but when he saw Pang Xiao and Jiziyu's expressions, he understood. He turned around and instructed the servants to properly entertain the servants who were carrying the betrothal gifts and the men who were accompanying them to rush their makeup. Then, he led Pang Xiao and Jiziyu into the room to drink tea and also approved of the wedding tomorrow. The atmosphere in the room was very good. In the courtyard, the old madam had long been dazzled by the rich betrothal gifts. Io, my heavens, this is a large amount, ah. Before our family was robbed, all of our assets added together didn't have this many small yellow croakers, ah. This is really too grand and too precious. With this money, our family will have a solid foundation. The old madam's hand trembled as she held the list of betrothal gifts. However, the Sun Clan was extremely displeased with the old madam's greed and spoke in a low voice. "These betrothal gifts will be carried to the prince's estate together with Sister Yi's dowry tomorrow. No matter how rich they are, they still have to be sent back." "Sent back?" The old madam's voice was sharp as she said, "Do you think we can send them back just because you say so? Are you the mistress, or am I the mistress? I said we won't send them back." Upon hearing this, the Sun Clan didn't argue with the old madam and only said, "I'm marrying off my daughter, not selling her. We can't keep any of these betrothal gifts." If it was the old madam, would the old madam also let others think that we, the maternal family, are greedy for money? The old madam was speechless and could only turn red with anger. Inside the room, Pang Xiao and Qin Huayuan had already discussed the specific process of the bridal escort tomorrow. Since Qin Huaiyuan had already agreed to this marriage, he naturally appeared to be very easygoing. If he could make things convenient for Pang Xiao, he would try his best to make things convenient for him. When Pang Xiao nervously mentioned the matter of blocking the door tomorrow, Qin Huaiyuan finally couldn't help but laugh. "Don't worry, Sister Yi's cousins know what to do. I will instruct them." Only then did Pang Xiao let out a long sigh of relief and nodded with a smile. Although he could officially marry Qin Yining the next day, he didn't want to marry her. He still felt that time was passing too slowly. The bridal escort team came and left in a grandiose manner. The front and back courtyards of the family Qin residence were filled with betrothal gifts. There was really no place to put them, so they could only pile the betrothal gifts outside and arrange for special people to look after them. Qin Yining waited until Pang Xiao, Ji Ziyu, and the others had all left. Only then did he go out and take a look at the spectacular betrothal gifts. When he saw the two small yellow croakers in the corridor, Qin Yining also fell silent. Pang Xiao must have shown his family's wealth at this time. Chapter 413. Qin Huaiyuan looked at the old madam's expectant eyes and was speechless for a moment. His Adam's apple rolled for a while before he said, "Mother, we can't keep these betrothal gifts." "Why?" The old madam suddenly stood up and shouted sharply. "Did that scourge from the Sun clan say something to you? Don't tell me you won't even listen to your mother's words now. I said keep it, so keep it. Not only the small yellow croakers, but also many other things. We have to keep them all. You don't manage the household, so you don't know how expensive firewood and rice are. Is it possible for the whole family to rely on such a small amount of salary? Your third brother's business is still moving here bit by bit. Do you know how many losses he has suffered in his business? Your wife said no, so it's no. Her brain must have been kicked by a donkey's hooves. She's simple-minded, but are you also simple-minded? She said she was afraid that Sister E would be looked down upon by her in-laws. I'm dying of laughter. Sister E was snatched away by Prince Zhongshuan long ago. What should have happened has happened. Her in-laws should have looked down on her long ago. Would they think highly of her just because she brought back some betrothal gifts? Qin Huaiyuan silently looked at the old madam. After a while, he said, "Mother, is this what a grandmother should say the night before her granddaughter's wedding?" "You, Mingu'er, what do you mean?" The old madam looked at Qin Huaiyuan in disbelief. Qin Huaiyuan said, "The family's money was lost, but it wasn't Sister E who lost it. Why do we need her betrothal gifts to make up for it? How is this making up for it? Since Sister E is a member of the family Qin, everything she has belongs to the family Qin. She's already so rich and will be a Wangfei in the future. Is there anything wrong with taking out some property to make up for the family?" Qin Huaiyuan shook his head and said, "Mother, what you're doing is wrong. Sister E doesn't owe our family anything. On the contrary, it's me, her father, who owes her a lot. I sacrificed her for the family, country, and all kinds of reasons. Although this marriage is barely satisfactory, it is still a marriage bestowed by Your Majesty, so is still considered respectable. She was the daughter of a surrendered Dayan. How could she stand firm in the Wang mansion? As her maiden family, even if we can't back her up, we can't drag her down either. If we keep all these treasures and silvers to ourselves, how is Sister E going to raise her head in the prince's residence when we return? Besides, there's one thing that Mother doesn't know. His son had just arrived at the Dezhou dynasty. Where did he get the money? The house we're living in now was bought by Sister E with her own money." "What?" Old Madam obviously couldn't believe it. She shook her head and said, "Impossible." "Why not? Don't you know Sister Yi's character? She knew I didn't have any money, so she used my name and paid for all the expenses. She didn't tell everyone because she was afraid that old Madam and her uncles would feel uncomfortable living there. She is a filial child. She didn't harm you or make you lose your family. Why can't you be more considerate of her?" Old Madam pursed her lips and stood in the same place. Looking at Qin Huaiyuan's serious face, she felt that her position in the family was in jeopardy. Now, even the most filial brother Meng wasn't willing to listen to her. What else could she say? Forget it, forget it. I said to keep the money. Was it for my own use? Didn't I also do it for this family? Since you said not to keep it, then I won't keep it." Qin Huaiyuan secretly sighed in relief and said, It's good that mother can get over it. Son only has this one daughter. I only want to treat her as well as possible. I hope mother can understand son's feelings. I understand. It's already like this. How can we understand? Qin Huayuan saw that old madam was still unhappy, so he lowered his voice and said some pleasant things to coax her. Qin Yining didn't know all of this, because she went to bed early after washing up. The next morning, Qin Yining was woken up by the Sun clan. Sister Yi, quickly get up to comb your hair. It's getting late. The Sun clan was wearing festive red clothes today. They looked very happy. Qin Yining rubbed the corners of her eyes and said, Mother, doesn't the bride's escort come at night? Why do I have to get up so early? You little girl, which bride would sleep until the sun is high up in the sky? There are many things to do. If you don't get up, Quan Fu, who will comb your hair, will come later. Qin Yining was helpless. She could only listen to the Sun clan and get up to wash up. She casually ate some snacks for breakfast and was pressed in front of the dressing table. The mother and daughter's gazes met in the mirror. They looked at each other and smiled. The Sun clan pinched Qin Yining's face and sighed. Time really flies. Sister, he has only been back for a few days, and you're about to get married. Mother hasn't thought about being intimate with you enough. As the Sun clan spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. Qin Yining quickly got up and hugged the Sun clan. She comforted her. Mother, don't be sad and don't worry. Wang Yu will treat his daughter well. Moreover, the Wang estate is in the capital. It will be easy for us to meet in the future. I know. I'm not sad. I'm just happy. The Sun clan sniffed and smiled at the maidservants in the room. You've all gone through life and death with Sister Yi. I trust you the most. In the future, when Sister Yi goes to the Wang estate, you have to take care of her and remind her. Yes, madam. We understand. Bing Tang and the others bowed in acknowledgement. Eldest sister-in-law, Madam Quan Fu, is here. Outside the door, second madam informed her and went to greet Madam Quan Fu. After Pang Xiao and Qin Huayuan decided on the candidate for Madam Quan Fu, Pang Xiao went to invite her. Madam Miao, the old madam of the Marquis of Champion Su family, was invited. This madam's family was harmonious and loving. She had a son and a daughter and many grandchildren. She was indeed a madam of Quan Fu. The Sun clan quickly went to the door to welcome Madam Miao and led her in with second Madam Quan Fu. Madam Miao was in her early 60s, but her hair was black and shiny. She didn't look old at all. When Qin Yining's eyes met hers in the mirror, Madam Miao praised, What a beautiful young lady. She took out a cotton thread, dipped it in powder, and began to scrunch Qin Yining's face. She was even muttering Ji Xiang's dialect. After scrunching his face, she trimmed his messy sideburns. Then, she took out a rhinoceros horn comb and combed Qin Yining's hair. There was a saying to comb one's hair. As she combed one's hair, she had to say auspicious words such as, with a comb, one can raise the case to the same level as the eyebrows. Second uncle's family is blessed. Qin Yining didn't say a word as he followed Madame Miao's actions. He looked at himself in the mirror and realized that today was actually his wedding day. For a moment, Qin Yining couldn't accept it. Time really passed too quickly. It was as if she was still worried about her and Peng Zhao's future. Now, all the problems have been solved. How lucky was she to have a family who loved her so much and Peng Zhao, who treated her so sincerely. Perhaps the suffering she had endured in the past 10 years was to save up all the blessings for now. Young lady, this phoenix coronet is the most unique one I've ever seen. Madame Miao put on Qin Yining's 3 phoenix coronet, which was a phoenix perching on a parasol tree. Then, she smoothed out the ruby beaded tassels in front of his face. Chapter 414. Seeing that Qin Yining lowered her eyes and didn't speak, her delicate features showing a bit of shyness, the women at the side all laughed. Second madam, who came to help, said with a smile, You're still talking about the phoenix coronet. Yesterday, we went to the Wang Fu to shop. I could be considered to have been rich before and have seen some of the world. But other than the imperial palace, I haven't seen a residence more magnificent than the Wang Fu. Wang Ye's care for our family's daughter can be seen from the layout of the residence. The flowers and the grass, the gold, and the silver. Every single one of them was exquisitely decorated. It could be seen how much Wang Yi and the old madam of the Wang Fu like Mississippi. As usual, on the day of the betrothal gifts, the maternal family would go to the bridal chamber to shop. Yesterday, second madam accompanied the Sun clan to the bridal chamber and also met with Ma Shi and the Yao clan. Although the Sun clan wasn't satisfied with this marriage, after meeting the in-laws, she could more or less relax. Hearing second madam's words, the Sun clan's uneasiness and worry finally eased a bit. Thinking about it, with such a gentle mother-in-law and mother-in-law, even if Wang Ye's temper was a bit bad, her daughter wouldn't suffer too much, right? Qin Yining saw her mother's expression in the mirror and then met second madam's gaze. She smiled gratefully. Second madam also returned her a sincere smile. In the end, they were all one family and had gone through trials and tribulations together. Now, other than Qin Yining, the only daughter left in the family Qin was 8th young Miss Qin Bounting of the 3rd branch. Qin Huaining was an ungrateful wretch, so second madam also kept a respectful distance from her. She didn't have the fortune of being her mother-in-law. Now, she just hoped that the 2 daughters of the family Qin could marry well. Qin Yining's husband was noble and could help the family in the future. He could also help Qin Bounting find a good husband. 4th older sister. The beaded curtain was lifted, and 8th young mistress, Qin Huaining, and Han's 2nd young mistress walked in one after another. Qin Yining had finished combing her hair, and the phoenix coronet was placed on the dressing table. She was looking up as Madame Quan Fu helped her put on her lipstick. She was wearing a snow-white inner garment, and a bright red wedding gown with gold and silver threads was unfolded on the hanger behind her. The bright red color was dazzling. Miss 8 exclaimed in surprise when she saw her. She walked up to her happily and said, "4th sister, you are so beautiful today." Qin Huaining also walked over, lowered his head, and curtsied. He said in a low voice, "Congratulations." Madame Yao's hands stopped moving. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Thank you very much." He then turned to Han's 2nd young mistress and said, "Second Tang Saw, you've also come. Come and sit." Han's 2nd young mistress also smiled and said good. For a moment, the womenfolk in the house were chatting and laughing happily. Only old Madame stayed in her room and smoked. She didn't seem to be attracted by the laughter. After Qin Yining finished putting on her makeup, she went behind the screen and asked Ji Yun and the others to help her put on the wedding gown. On the bright red brocade, there were flowers and riches embroidered with golden threads. The colorful threads on the collar shone with a faint silver light and outlined the lifelike dragon and phoenix. The snow-white collar was pinned with an exquisite ruby collar. The well-tailored sleeves outlined her well-proportioned figure. The corners of the 8 dresses of the same color were also embroidered with an exquisite and small Ru-Yi pattern with red threads. Qin Yining came out from behind the screen, and Madame Quan Fu tied her up and put on the phoenix coronet. The ruby beads in Jean Feng's mouth swayed slightly behind her head and on both sides of her head. The tassel pendant used to cover her face just happened to cover her face. She felt that it was a hindrance, so she chatted and pinned it on both sides of her head. The house was silent. Qin Yining blinked. Then she smiled and pulled the material of the gown around her waist, saying, "Mother, why do I feel that the gown is a bit tight?" Her words broke the silence in the house. Sun Clan's mother hurriedly walked forward and pulled Qin Yining's hand to look around. She smiled and said, No, it's just right. It's not tight at all. Is it?" Qin Yining looked down and smiled. Mother must be right. She held Sun Clan's hand with both hands. "Mother, don't be nervous. The days in the future will get better and better." Sun Clan's eyes turned red in an instant. She held back her tears and sniffled. Good. My daughter will definitely raise her eyebrows with Wang Yi and grow old together. Sister Yi, Mother really can't bear to part with you. You haven't enjoyed a day of happiness by my side since you were young. After you came home, Mother didn't treat you well. I haven't had the chance to make it up to you, yet you're about to get married. Sun Clan's tears fell like beads from a broken necklace when she said this. Qin Yining's eyes also turned red, and tears fell as well. Mother, this isn't your fault. We still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of time. Sun Clan's mother choked with sobs and nodded repeatedly. Second Madam wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. She smiled and came forward to support Sun Clan's arm. Eldest sister-in-law, don't provoke Sister E. She should cry, but the Marchioness of Champion just put on makeup for Sister E. Madame Yao laughed when she heard this. Our daughter is like a fairy. Even when she cries, she's like a pear blossom bathed in rain. I can't take my eyes off her. Her beautiful words made all the women in the house laugh. After Qin Yining finished dressing up, she sat on the bed. The phoenix coronet was too heavy, so she placed it on the dressing table. Sun Clan's mother and second madam led Madame Yao out, and they were busy entertaining the guests. Only Miss Ba and Qin Huaining were left in the room to keep her company. Bing Tang, Qiu Lu, Ji Yun, and Xian Yin were all on guard against Qin Huaining causing trouble today, so they found a place to sew in the room. Miss Ba leaned over to Qin Yining's side and chatted with her. Although she had experienced a lot, Miss Ba was still as sincere and innocent as before. Qin Huaining saw that they hit it off so well that she couldn't get a word in edgewise. Moreover, Qin Yining's current status was too high for her to reach, and she couldn't compare to her. She simply didn't want others to say that she was trying to curry favor with the rich and powerful. Qin Yining was happy to see Qin Huaining like this, so she simply chatted with Miss Ba about some interesting things and told her, after I leave home, if anything happens at home, you can come to me. If there are any conflicts, you can also help mediate. My mother has a short temper, and when I'm not by her side, there's no one to advise her. Help me take care of her. Fourth older sister, don't worry. Miss Ba held Qin Yining's hand and promised, Eldest aunt has always been very good to me. Even if fourth older sister didn't ask, I would still do the same. When Qin Yining heard this, she felt slightly relieved. Because they were afraid that they would have to go to the toilet again after getting on the sedan chair, the Sun Clan only allowed Qin Yining to eat a bowl of porridge for lunch. They didn't allow her to eat anything else. After taking a short nap, she redid her makeup. The sky gradually darkened, and the auspicious time was about to arrive. The Sun Clan's mother was clearly more nervous. When she held Qin Yining's hand, her palms were sweating. She told the servant girls to leave for the time being, and she only sat on the bed with Qin Yining and whispered many intimate words to her. Chapter 415. Did he mean that he wanted to let Pang Xiao do whatever he wanted? Right at this moment, the joyous sounds of gongs and drums could be heard from outside, followed by the crackling sounds of firecrackers. Bing Tang ran in and said at the door, Madam, Wang Ye's wedding procession is already at the door. Elder Yu and Second Master Han are blocking the door. However, this servant went around to the main street to take a look. Wang Ye's wedding procession is simply too spectacular. It's a sea of elite soldiers, and each of them is riding a tall horse. Bing Tang was clearly shocked by the spectacular wedding procession. When he spoke, his cheeks were flushed red, and he spoke so quickly that it was as if he was spilling beans. The Sun Clan was dumbfounded when they heard this. He brought soldiers to escort the bride? Isn't he too rude? Is he here to escort the bride or to kidnap the bride? The Sun Clan even suspected that if Qin Yu and Qin Han's problems were too difficult, Pang Xiao would bring soldiers and directly charge into the residence. Although Pang Xiao had treated Qin Yining well in the past, and the Sun Clan had also seen how Pang Xiao had curried favor with their daughter in Dian. However, he had also taken advantage of Qin Yining before. Thinking about it carefully, this was a rotten debt that couldn't be cleared up. However, Your Majesty had decreed a marriage, and no one had the right to say no. While the Sun Clan was deeply worried, Bing Tang had already run out to watch the commotion. Madame Yao and Ji Yun supported Qin Yining together and helped her tidy up her wedding attire. They also prepared the treasured vase that she would carry when she got into the sedan chair later. They also prepared the auspicious red wedding veil for the dragon and phoenix. Qin Yining pursed her bright red lips and clutched her sleeves to wipe the sweat from her palms. When it was time for her to get married, she was still nervous. The Sun Clan placed the golden phoenix hairpin in place and fixed the phoenix coronet for her. She held Qin Yining's hand and looked at her daughter seriously. She nodded and said, "Good, good. There's nothing left out. Sister E, mother will go out first. Later, let them help you to old madam's room to kowtow and bid farewell." "Yes." Qin Yining nodded. The members of the Sun clan turned around and walked out of the door. As they walked towards the main room, they used their sleeves to wipe the tears from the corners of their eyes. Miss, Bing Tang ran in again and said with a smile, "Wang Yi is too amazing." Wang Yi was able to answer the two young masters' questions. They didn't stop him and opened the door willingly. Wang Yi even rewarded the servants with a tael of silver ingots. Qin Yining's heart thumped wildly when she heard Bing Tang's words. Through the swaying tassels in front of her eyes, she felt that the furnishings in the room were dazzling and surreal. At this moment, the sound of firecrackers came closer and closer. The makeup music became even more urgent. A matron of honor shouted from outside the door, "Welcome the bride, and bid farewell to your parents." Miss Qin, Madame Miao, held Qin Yining's hand and helped her get up. She straightened out her skirt and smiled. "Let's go. We should go to the main room." After coming out of Qin Yining's room, they walked along the corridor covered with a red carpet. After turning a corner, they entered old madam's main room. There were many people standing in the room. The old madam was sitting at the head of the table. Qin Huayuan and the Sun clan were sitting on either side of her. Second uncle, second aunt, third uncle, and other elders were also standing to the side. The women of the guest families were all invited by the family Qin. When Qin Yining's figure appeared at the door, the room suddenly quieted down for a moment. The neon lights under the night sky became her background. The colorful women around her all paled in comparison. When she walked over leisurely, her slightly rippling skirt was like a red lotus blooming. The golden phoenix Biao trembled slightly and spread its wings as if it was about to fly. The ruby tassels reflected the candlelight and sparkled brightly. Even with all the jewels and jewels, they couldn't hide her beauty. It would not be overshadowed by the jewelry. It would only make her look more noble and dazzling. While everyone's attention was on Qin Yining had already seen Pang Xiao, who was wearing a red python robe. He was in high spirits and was incomparably handsome. He wore a purple and gold crown on his head, and his hair was neatly tied up. Under his sword-like eyebrows, his usually sharp and cold phoenix eyes were smiling and filled with gentleness. His thin lips were slightly curved under his high nose. His smile was not exaggerated, but it made people feel that he was in a good mood. The red python robe made him look like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. But the moment they saw Qin Yining, everyone felt that this famous fiend, Wang Yi, seemed to be like a treasured sword that had been sheathed. In an instant, he softened. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Qin Yining lifted her skirt and knelt on the brocade cushion that Mammy Qin had brought. She first bowed to the old madam, then looked at Qin Huan and the Sun clan. "Father, mother, this unfilial daughter bids farewell to the two elders." It was rare for Qin Huayuan to wear a purple brocade robe. After some grooming, he looked like he was 5 years younger. He looked even more handsome, like a banished immortal. He looked at Qin Yining with an indescribable tenderness in his eyes. He said in a gentle voice, "Sister E, from today onwards, you will be the wife of the Pang family. You must be filial to your elders, docile and respectful, serve your husband, and be a gentle and virtuous wife. Do you understand?" "Your daughter understands." Qin Huayuan nodded. As usual, after the father's lecture, the bride would be carried to the sedan chair by the elder brother. However, Qin Huayuan stood up and personally helped Qin Yining up. He said, "Although you are the wife of the Pang family, you are still the daughter of my family Qin. You are the only pearl in my palm. No matter what happens, you must remember that your father and the family Qin will be your most solid support." Qin Yining suddenly raised her head. She couldn't believe it, and the shock in her heart couldn't be expressed in words. When the members of the Sun clan heard this, tears fell from their eyes. However, they also stood up and nodded in agreement. "Father." Qin Yining found that her voice was hoarse. She hurriedly cleared her throat and said, "Your daughter understands." The guests invited by the family Qin were stunned. Was he lecturing his daughter or provoking the Prince Zhongshuan? Everyone looked at Pang Zhao's face at the same time. However, they could only see Pang Zhao's handsome, smiling face. Everyone had the same thought. The Prince Zhongshuan was really loyal to the emperor and patriotic. He knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Your daughter can't fulfill her filial piety in front of my parents in the future. I can't please Madame Dowager. Please take care of your health. Qin Yining seriously exhorted. Qin Huayuan's throat trembled, and he nodded silently. At this scene, even the Madame Dowager, who had been unhappy in her heart, also wiped her tears. Sister Yi, you should live a simple life as husband and wife. This is the greatest filial piety to your grandmother. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Yes, your granddaughter will remember. The auspicious time has arrived. At this moment, the matron of honor's high-pitched voice came from outside. Immediately, joyous music was played, and the firecrackers were lit again. Chapter 416. Madame Miao took the red veil and covered Qin Yining's head. Qin Yu was already standing at the door with his back to the room. He said, "Fourth sister, come, big brother will carry you." Qin Yining supported Madame Miao, and the matron of honor walked to the door and climbed onto Qin Yu's back. Qin Yu steadily carried Qin Yining down the steps and walked out along the red carpet. Qin Yining heard Qin Yu's advice amidst the joyous noise. If you are bullied at your in-laws' house, you don't have to be afraid. Although the prince is in a high position, our family is not to be trifled with. 3 cobblers are equal to 1 zhuge. What's more, eldest uncle is so powerful. If you are wronged, don't keep it to yourself. Don't be overcautious and make yourself suffer. If there is anything, come back and tell your family. Qin Yining's heart felt like it was soaked in a hot spring in the dead of winter. Although this family had been scattered by reality and disaster, and there were indeed some people in the family who had ulterior motives. But, generally speaking, her family was very warm, and her family was very good to her. Thank you, big brother. I know. Big brother, take care of yourself. I will come back when I am free. If anything happens at home, don't hide it from me. If my father doesn't tell me, big brother can tell me. Alas, don't worry. If anything happens, I will definitely come to you. I was a little worried at first, but when I saw the way Wang Yi looked at you, I was relieved. While speaking, Qin Yu carried Qin Yining to the sedan chair. The matron of honor and Madame Chuanfu helped Qin Yining onto the sedan chair. They handed the precious bottle to her and said, "Hold it tight. Don't drop it." Qin Yining responded, and the sedan chair's curtain was closed. Qin Yining could only see a gorgeous red. Although she was curious, she couldn't lift the curtain to look outside. However, Bing Tang, Qiu Lu, Xian Yun, Ji Yun, and Lian Xiaozhou all followed the sedan chair. They were all part of the dowry and followed Qin Yining to the prince's mansion. Bing Tang held Lian Xiaozong's hand and looked left and right. She was so excited that her eyes were shining. "Miss, Wang Yi didn't throw peanuts and red dates into the crowd along the way, but copper coins. Fistfuls of copper coins." Listen to the loud cheers outside. Everyone has taken the money and is congratulating Wang Yi. Yes, Mississippi. Ji Yun turned around and looked into the distance. She was so shocked that she was speechless. Behind our sedan chair is the joyful board. Behind it is the dowry team. Lei Oi has prepared 128 chests of dowry for you, plus 210 chests of betrothal gifts. A total of 390 lifts. Wang Yi hired elite soldiers to deliver the dowry. Every 2 people carry the dowry, and there's a long tail behind us. It's bright red. We've already turned 2 corners. I reckon the dowry behind us hasn't even left the mansion yet. Is that Prince Consort Ji? Xian Yun also craned her neck and said in surprise, "Miss, Prince Consort Ji is leading the Tiger Army to escort us." Qin Yining, who was in the sedan chair with 8 cheers, heard the maidservant's surprised and happy voices. She actually felt a little regretful that she couldn't see such a grand scene. The disappointment of bidding farewell to her parents and the past in her heart had already been washed away by this joyous atmosphere. What welcomed her was a brand new identity and a brand new life. She was Pang Zhao's princess consort, and Pang Xiao was her husband. They would support each other and share honor and disgrace. They would be sweet together until they grew old. Qin Yining smiled happily. She once again felt that all the suffering she had suffered for the past 10 years was for the sake of her future happiness. If time went back to when she was 7 years old, she would never have thought that the beautiful big brother who had reached out to her when she was in danger would be her husband. The citizens of the capital had not seen such a lively scene in a long time. Even the eldest princess wedding last year was not as grand as this. There was a high-spirited groom on a tall horse, a large sedan chair with 8 cheers, and several miles of dowry behind it. There were also the soldiers and the handsome general leading the procession. All of this could be summed up in one word: 10 miles of red dowry. The king's mansion was right in front of them, and it was filled with joy once again. The firecrackers at the entrance of the king's mansion sounded, and the procession stopped. Pang Xiao dismounted from his horse and took the bow. He pointed at the top of the sedan chair and fired 3 arrows. The arrows were neatly arranged and nailed to the top of the sedan chair at the same angle, causing all the guests to cheer, especially the Tiger Army and Jinghui. Seeing their god of war so spirited and confident, they all began to cheer. The sedan chair was lowered, and Qin Yining came out with the help of the matron of honor. She stepped over the brazier and gave the bottle to the matron of honor. Then she took one end of the red silk. From her angle, she could see the large silk flower in the middle of the red silk, as well as Pang Xiao's red embroidered robe and black boots. The one holding her hand was her husband. He was going to bring her into his life completely. Qin Yining stepped through the gates of the king's mansion and walked on the red carpet to the main hall amidst the cheers. The sound of the firecrackers came to an end, and what came next was the whistle of fireworks flying into the sky and the sound of large fireworks exploding in the sky. The brilliant light of the fireworks lit up the brocade on her body and also lit up the courtyard of the king's mansion. When the crowd came to the main hall, Yao, Chenggu, Madame Ma, and the Yao clan, who were dressed in red, were already sitting at the head of the table according to their status. The front hall was packed with guests. The master of ceremonies sang loudly, "First bow to the heavens and earth." Qin Yining was helped by the matron of honor to turn around and bow down. "Second bow, your majesty has arrived." Before the master of ceremonies could finish his second sentence, the eunuch's sharp voice covered his words. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked outside. They saw a bright yellow figure striding in under the protection of the imperial bodyguards. "Your Majesty, long live, long live, long live." The guests bowed one after another and shouted "Long live" 3 times. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining also had to bow. Li Qitian was already in front of them. He put his arm around Pang Xiao's shoulder and said with a smile, "Good brother, you're dressed up very well today. I'm late, but I'm not too late, right? Your Majesty, why did you leave the palace? Your safety, it's fine. My sworn younger brother is getting married. How can I, as his older brother, not come to the wedding wine?" Li Qitian smiled and looked at Yao Chenggu, Madame Ma, and the Yao clan. When he saw that Pang Xiao's mother was not here, he choked for a moment but did not show it. Yao Chenggu hurriedly brought his wife and children to bow to Li Qitian. Li Qitian was not willing to accept and helped the 3 people up. Under the invitation of the 3 people, he sat at the head of the table. Li Qitian smiled and said, "Continue, don't be delayed by me." When the master of ceremonies saw Li Qitian, he did not know how to speak. It was the head eunuch Li Guanwen who was quick-witted and said with a smile, "Second bow to the emperor." Qin Yining turned around and bowed with Pang Xiao. Husband and wife bow to each other. Qin Yining turned around with the help of the matron of honor and bowed again. "Send them to the bridal chamber. The ceremony is complete." As soon as Li Guanwen finished speaking, the sound of fireworks outside suddenly became louder. Chapter 417. Qin Yining's line of sight was blocked by the bridal veil, so she could only look down at her feet. She was helped to sit on the edge of the bed, and then she felt the bedding beside her sink. A strong person with a strong sense of presence sat beside her. She looked down and could see Pang Xiao's red robe and slender legs. Madame Quan Fu stepped forward with a smile and pressed the corner of Qin Yining's dress on Pang Zhao's robe. Then she bumped into a tray with a wedding scale tied with a red concentric knot. "Groom, please lift the bridal veil and be satisfied with route E from now on." Pang Zhao pursed his lips, his handsome face expressionless. Only he knew that his hand, which had never hesitated to cut off the enemy's head on the battlefield, was now trembling as he held the wedding scale. He looked at the delicate person beside him and lifted the auspicious red veil with trembling hands, handing it to Madame Quan Fu along with the wedding scale. The room was brightly lit. Under the warm orange light, Qin Yining lowered her eyes. Even the luxurious gold ornaments couldn't hide her stunning face. The bridal chamber was quiet for a moment. Pang Zhao's slender and strong hands lifted the row of hair in front of her phoenix coronet and pinned it on the golden phoenixes on both sides. Beautiful mountains and beautiful eyes, a fine nose and beautiful lips, truly beautiful beyond compare. All the guests who came to the bridal chamber to watch the fun held their breaths and only came back to their senses after a long time. Madame Quan Fu recited a poem. Yi Erqiu joined the brilliant purple mill, fanning the clouds and the moon. 2 lines of praise, kneeling to welcome each other, scattering fruits to contend with the song many times. As she recited, children from the guests' families sprinkled red dates, peanuts, longans, and lotus seeds on Pang Zhao and Qin Yining, as well as on the wedding bed behind them. The guests became lively, shouting auspicious words like "give birth to a noble child soon and grow old together." After scattering the veil, Madame Quan Fu brought over a tray with 2 pure gold wine cups. "Invite the bride and groom to drink wine together and live happily ever after." Qin Yining raised his hand to pick up the wine cup. He touched Pang Zhao's hand slightly before pulling away. She looked up at Pang Zhao. Pang Zhao also held his wine cup and looked over with lowered eyes. Their eyes met. Pang Zhao's gaze was so hot that it could melt people. Qin Yining lowered his eyes and avoided the attack. Pang Zhao saw her rosy face, and his heart was filled with love and tenderness. He stretched out his long arm and held her arm. Qin Yining's face came closer and closer to his. Finally, they drank the nuptial wine beside each other's face and shoulder. "Great!" Everyone cheered and gave their blessings. Qin Yining put down his wine cup and lowered his head. Madame Chuanfu brought a plate of dumplings and handed a pair of ivory chopsticks to Qin Yining. Qin Yining was a little surprised. He secretly wondered what kind of etiquette was this, but he still took the ivory chopsticks and took a bite. The dumplings seemed to have only been soaked in hot water. The dough inside was still raw, and the sugar had not melted yet. Qin Yining frowned and said, "It's raw." When he looked up, he saw Pang Zhao's smiling eyes. Madame Quan Fu laughed out loud. "Did everyone hear that?" "The princess consort said it herself. It's raw." All the female guests in the room laughed and cheered. "We heard that." "The princess consort said it's raw." "Princess consort, quickly give Wang Yi a little air." Qin Yining speechlessly spat out the raw dumpling wrapper and lowered his head with a red face. There seemed to be sugar on his lips, and it tasted sweet when he pursed them. "The ceremony is over. Everyone, let's go out and eat." Madame Quan Fu organized everyone to go out. Soon, only Pang Zhao and Qin Yining were left in the bridal chamber. The 2 of them sat side by side on the step bed. Not far away, there was a square table covered with a red tablecloth. The red candles were burning brightly. Suddenly, there was a pop sound and a flower burst out. Pang Zhao cleared his throat and said in a hoarse voice, "My mother said that an explosion of candles is a good sign." "Yes." Qin Yining lowered his head and didn't know what to say. Pang Zhao said again, The phoenix crown is heavy, right? Let me help you take it off." "Sure." Qin Yining looked at him with a smile. "My mother woke me up early this morning to comb my hair, put on my face, and put on my makeup. It was clearly the right time at night, but everything was ready at noon. This phoenix crown is made of solid gold. My neck is about to be crushed." Pang Zhao got up at this time. With Qin Yining's cooperation, he first removed the few hairpins used to hold the crown in place. Then, he carefully took off the phoenix crown with both hands, for fear that he would pull her hair and cause her pain. Without a few kilograms of gold and gemstones on her head, Qin Yining moved her neck and heard a crack sound. She rubbed her neck and let out a long breath. If I wear this thing every day, I won't be able to stand it. I don't even dare to lower my head with such a heavy thing on my head. Pang Xiao laughed. He sat beside her and massaged her neck and shoulders with one hand. The touch under his hand was so slender and smooth that Pang Xiao's heart rippled. He hurriedly coughed and withdrew his hand. Sister I'll go out to propose a toast first. Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao's face and knew what he was thinking just now. She nodded with a red face. Go ahead. It'll be rude if you're late. Okay. By the way, I asked someone to prepare some food for you. I'll ask them to bring it to you later. Take off your makeup and rest first. Don't wait for me. I don't know how long this group of people will make a scene. Qin Yining nodded again. Pang Xiao looked at her soft and beautiful face and couldn't help but smile and touch her face. I'll go first. Qin Yining didn't dare to look into his eyes at this time. She only lowered her long eyelashes and nodded silently. She didn't know that her appearance made Pang Xiao's heart burn more and more. Pang Xiao stumbled away. If he stayed a little longer, he was afraid that he couldn't control himself and couldn't go out to propose a toast. When Pang Xiao left, Qin Yining finally let out a sigh of relief. Just now, he had stared at his prey as though he could eat her. Thinking of how the Sun Clan had said that he could do whatever he wanted, Qin Yining's ears burned. He had to cover his face to cool himself down. At this time, there was a light knock on the door. Then the door was pushed open with a creak. Bing Tang, Ji Yun, Xian Yun, and Xiu Lu walked in with food boxes and other things. Bing Tang smiled and said, Wang Yi just ordered that Wang Fei must not be tired or hungry. He told us servants to serve Wang Fei some food first. Wang Yi is really attentive to Wang Fei. He said that this chicken soup was simmered over a small fire in the kitchen. The bones and meat are all soft. He added red dates and wolfberries. It's good for Wang Fei's body to eat. Xiu Lu happily put down the food boxes and ladled a bowl of chicken soup for Qin Yining. Then, she placed a few plates of exquisite desserts and side dishes on the table. Qin Yining was indeed starving. The Sun Clan was afraid that something would happen midway, so they didn't give her anything to eat the entire day. At this time, Ji Yun and Xian Yun helped her take off her wedding clothes. After she untied her hair, she sat at the square table in her inner clothes and wolfed down the food. After eating 2 desserts, a few side dishes, and drinking half a bowl of soup, Qin Yining finally let out a sigh of relief. I feel like I'm alive again. The 4 servant girls couldn't help but laugh when they saw this. Qin Yining asked again, Where's the small kanji? Chapter 4:18. Little kanji is in my room. She's already asleep. Princess consort, you don't know, but our courtyard is very spacious. There aren't many people in the Wangfu, so we servants all have our own rooms. The family Qin's residence in the capital wasn't big. They were already used to sharing a room in pairs. They were still not used to the Wangfu's living conditions being so good all of a sudden. Qin Yining drank the soup slowly and said with a smile, You've all gone through life and death with me. I treat you as sisters and friends in my heart. The conditions here are good, so of course it's good. If there's anything wrong, don't just tell me to save trouble. You have to tell me everything. Do you understand? I understand. Princess consort, you're different from before. Wang Yi dotes on you so much. As long as you ask, Wang Yi will definitely obey. We servants have benefited from this. Ji Yin joked with a smile. Qin Yining didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Look at you all. You must be living an easy life. You're becoming more and more unruly. The maidservants all burst into laughter. After Qin Yining finished eating, she went to wash up. Xiu Lu carried a set of aqua-red muslin nightgown to the washroom. Princess consort, Madam specially ordered this servant to wear this tonight. Qin Yining blushed when she saw the muslin nightgown. What kind of clothes are these? I look like I'm not wearing anything. Xiu Lu's face also turned red. Princess consort, Madam ordered it. You should change. Perhaps this is how it should be. Qin Yining took the nightgown. She really wanted to find a hole to hide in, but thinking about it, the servants accompanying her in the room weren't married yet. They didn't know much about the world. She and Pang Xiao were husband and wife after all. It was inevitable that they would encounter some embarrassing things. This was just the beginning. Qin Yining couldn't help but cover her face. She had no choice but to change. The nightgown wasn't very transparent. It was an aqua-red tunic with narrow sleeves and silk pants of the same color. Other than her shoulders being vaguely visible, everything else was normal. This made Qin Yining feel more at ease. When he went out, Bing Tang and the others had also gone out. Xiao Lu smiled, bowed, and left. Qin Yining sat down on the heated Kong bed, facing the window across from the bed, and casually picked up a book to read. It was a travel book, talking about the folk customs of the Northwest. Qin Yining had never been to the Northwest before, so he was immersed in watching with relish. When Pang Xiao came back, he saw the beauty leaning against a big pillow and reading under the light. Her long hair was draped over her back and shoulders. Her gauze dress was thin, and her slender neck, delicate collarbone, and round shoulders were all softened by a faint matte light. The red tube top could barely hide her curves. Pang Xiao felt that the wine he had just drunk had turned into magma, flowing through his limbs and bones. Qin Yining only came back to his senses when he heard footsteps. Seeing Pang Xiao standing in front of her with a slightly red face, she couldn't help but smile and say, "You're back? Should I ask them to fetch water for you to wash up?" Pang Xiao didn't say a word and only stared at her. Qin Yining put down the book with some worry. She knelt on the heated Kong bed and raised a soft white hand to touch his slightly hot cheeks. "What's wrong? Did you drink too much wine?" Pang Xiao picked up Qin Yining and strode to the bed. He gently placed her on the red brocade mattress. Her jet black hair was scattered on the pillow. Her red clothes and red mattress made her skin look as white and clean as new snow. After a series of movements, her collar was already open. She was lying on her back, and she didn't realize that she was naturally charming. Pang Xiao couldn't hold back anymore. He didn't dare to go overboard in the past, because he was afraid of hurting her. Now that he could finally have her, he wasn't a man if he held back any longer. Fiery kisses landed on her forehead, the tip of her nose, and her lips. Qin Yining gradually sank into the warm and strong embrace. She remembered what her mother taught her. Let him do whatever he wants. She really endured the pain and allowed him to do whatever he wanted. This indulgence lasted until midnight. The man was like a beast that was never satisfied. When his large hand reached over again, Qin Yining finally picked up the pillow and threw it at his chest. "We still have to serve tea tomorrow. If you move again, you can sleep on the floor." Okay. I won't move." Pang Xiao held her in his arms and let her rest on his shoulder. Under his touch, her forehead was full of sweat and her body was also wet. Pang Xiao lovingly and satisfactorily kissed her forehead. He wiped her body with a warm handkerchief and put away the handkerchief. Only then did he crawl back into bed. He hugged the soft and warm body in his arms and fell asleep contentedly. Qin Yining felt as if she was hugging a big stove. The weather in May in the north was still a little cold. She usually curled up into a ball when she slept, but today she slept with her limbs stretched out. Both her feet were unbelievably warm. When she opened her eyes in a daze, she saw the bright red canopy of 100 children and thousands of grandchildren. She was still a little dazed. After a long while, she remembered that yesterday was her wedding night. "Good morning, sistery." A deep and hoarse male voice sounded by her ear. Qin Yining turned her head and a kiss fell on her lips. Pang Xiao was lying on his side, beside her with his head propped up. The bright red brocade quilt covered his chest down. His exposed shoulders and arms showed the strong lines of his muscles. There were also scars on his shoulders from when he saved her. Qin Yining's face turned red. She pulled the quilt to cover her face. Pang Xiao was amused by her cute reaction and laughed. He pulled her into his arms and asked with concern, "Does your body still hurt? I have a very good ointment. Do you want me to apply it for you?" She punched his chest mercilessly. "Get out. I don't want to talk to you." Pang Xiao laughed loudly again. He didn't have the heart to tease her, but her reaction was too cute. Pang Xiao forcefully planted a few kisses on her cheeks and forehead. Then he got up and put on his inner clothes and called for people to come in. Bing Tang, Chiu Lu, Jian, and Xianyan came in with hot water, brocade handkerchiefs, and other things. They all had red faces. Some went to warm the water, while others came to serve Qin Yining. Bing Tang saw the bruises on Qin Yining's body and scolded in a low voice. "Did you eat meat or something?" He took out a box of ointment from his sleeve and gave it to Qin Yining. He lowered his voice even more. "Princess Consort, this ointment is very good. If you use this, you'll be fine in a day." Qin Yining took the box with a red face and nodded. "Thank you." Bing Tang smiled and said, "Then you should get up and change your clothes first." Ji Yun and Bing Tang helped Qin Yining change his clothes and wash his face. Pang Xiao waved Chiu Lu and Xian Yun away. He washed his face and put on his clothes. Then he sat on the edge of the heated Kong bed with his hair down and watched Qin Yining do his makeup in front of the mirror. If it was in the past, he would have thought that it was a waste of time to watch women comb their hair. But today, when he saw Qin Yining's long black hair being combed into a woman's hairstyle with the skillful hands of a maidservant, Pang Xiao felt more satisfied than if he had won the world. "Sister E, help me comb my hair later." Pang Xiao smiled and came over. He rubbed his cheek against Qin Yining's hair. The servant girls all retreated to the outer room with red faces. Qin Yining smiled and said, "I'm not good at combing hair." Chapter 419. Qin Yining was so amused that she couldn't help but smile. She said playfully, "That won't do. If your hair isn't combed properly, people will at most say that Wang Yi is a straightforward person who doesn't care about such details. But if my eyebrows are crooked, I'll become a laughingstock. Won't I embarrass you then?" "Embarrass you? I can't wait to hide you away and not let anyone see you." His large hand wrapped around her slender waist and gently caressed her. He whispered in her ear, "You didn't see how those people stared at you yesterday. I can't wait to gouge their eyes out." Qin Yining said angrily, "Look at you. You want to lock me up and gouge their eyes out. I'm scared just listening to you." She pretended to be scared. Pang Xiao couldn't help but laugh when he saw how cute she was. "Sister E, why are you so cute?" After planting a loud kiss on her cheek, Pang Xiao picked up a brush and began to carefully draw her eyebrows. This hand, which was capable of wielding a saber to kill the enemy in battle, was now carefully drawing her eyebrows. Unexpectedly, the color of her eyebrows was just right, and it was very beautiful. Pang Xiao's eyebrows were very beautiful. Qin Yining looked at herself in the mirror and said with a smile, "Your skills are not bad. If you don't want to be Wang Yi in the future, you can also specialize in drawing other people's eyebrows." She turned around and touched Pang Xiao's chin. "With such a handsome face, if you're willing to draw other people's eyebrows, won't all the young ladies and young wives fight for you?" "Hey, you naughty girl, you're actually teasing me." Pang Xiao laughed and tickled Qin Yining. Qin Yining's waist was the most untouchable part. As soon as Pang Xiao's large hand touched her, she couldn't help but laugh. She laughed and dodged. "Stop fooling around. I just combed my hair." However, Pang Xiao did not give up. He carried her onto the step bed. Not only did he put his hands on her, but he also kept blowing hot air on her neck and earlobe. Qin Yining laughed so hard that he was out of breath. He could neither push her away nor hide from her, so he could only beg for mercy while panting. Madame Ma's most capable servant, Granny Mi, came to Jin Huayuan and saw the servant girls standing in the courtyard chatting. She could even faintly hear the laughter of women in the main room. Granny Mi couldn't help but laugh. "Mammy is here." Ji Yin bowed first. Xian Yun, Bing Tang, and Chiu Lu also bowed. Granny Mi smiled and said, "I came to see if Wang Yi and Princess Consort have gotten up yet." Bing Tang said with a smile, "Nanny, Wang Yi and the Princess Consort got up early and just got dressed. They are waiting to greet Old Master, Old Madam, and Madam Dowager and serve tea." Bing Tang knew the rules of the big families, so he naturally said what was good for Qin Yining. Granny Mi smiled and said, "Then I will wait here for a moment. I will go back to greet Wang Yi and Princess Consort." Bing Tang bowed cleverly and turned to walk to the main room. As soon as Granny Mi spoke outside, Pang Xiao had already heard it. He also heard footsteps approaching, so he had to stop. He helped Qin Yining up and straightened the hairpin that was about to slip. Qin Yining laughed with tears in her eyes, and her face flushed. Finally, she stopped laughing. She glared at him and took a comb to comb his hair. Bing Tang said at the door, "Wang Yi, princess consort, Granny Mi is here." Pang Xiao naturally knew that Granny Mi came to get the handkerchief, so he smiled and said, "Let her in." Qin Yining quickly combed Pang Xiao's hair. When Granny Mi came in, she didn't let go, so she smiled and nodded to greet her. "Hello, Granny." "Oh, princess consort, don't be like this. This old servant greets princess consort." Granny Mi saw that Qin Yining personally combed Pang Xiao's hair and heard the laughter in the room, so she was very happy. Qin Yining smiled and said, "You are an old servant of grandmother. Of course you deserve it." Granny Mi smiled and chatted with Qin Yining for a while. Then she wandered around the room. When she came to the bedside, she saw a small wooden box. She picked it up and put it in her sleeve. Qin Yining saw this and finally realized what it was. Her face turned red, and she lowered her head, not knowing what to do. Granny Mi smiled and said, "This old servant will go back to Pine Crane Hall first." Pang Xiao smiled generously and said, "Granny Mi, take care." She watched as Granny Mi took the small box and left. Qin Yining coughed and said, "Let's hurry. Don't be too late and make mother, grandfather, and grandmother wait for a long time." "I'll listen to you." Pang Xiao stood and straightened his outer robe. He added, "In any case, we can continue to play when we get back." Qin Yining silently pinched his arm and then ordered the servant girls to bring the 3 pairs of shoes she had prepared. She and Pang Xiao walked together. They left Jin Hua Yuan and walked to Pine Crane Hall. The two of them didn't walk very fast. Pang Xiao introduced the layout of the residence to Qin Yining along the way. "You live here for a short time, and it wasn't convenient for you to move around. Now that you've returned to cultivation after your wedding, I removed some of the people in the residence. It's relatively safer now. You can live here more comfortably." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. He asked, "Was your Majesty drunk yesterday? When did he leave?" "When I went out to propose a toast, your Majesty had already left in a hurry. My people said that your Majesty received a secret report and left in a hurry. When he left, he didn't look too good." Qin Yining was somewhat worried. "I hope it doesn't have anything to do with you. I'm still hoping that we can live a peaceful life for a while." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Don't worry. It doesn't matter whether it has anything to do with me or not. Your man won't be bullied by anyone. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I'll always have a way to deal with it. You just have to be at ease and enjoy life at home. You don't have to work as hard as you used to." Qin Yining felt shy and touched when he said, "Your man." She was always working hard for others. This was the first time that someone had promised her that she didn't have to work hard and that he would take care of everything. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Then I'll just continue to be lazy from now on. You can't blame me." "Why would I? If you're really willing to be lazy, I'll even reward you. How about it?" As the two chatted and laughed, they had already arrived at Pine Crane Hall. As soon as they entered the courtyard, Bai Tao hurriedly went into the room to report. The husband and wife led the servants into the main room, bypassing the newly installed big screen with the tip of the eyebrows, and came to the inner room. Yao, Chingu, Madame Ma, and the Yao clan were all there. Everyone's faces were filled with joy. Nanny Mi instructed Chui Tao and Bai Tao to set up a beautiful cushion. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining knelt down side by side and bowed deeply. Okay, get up quickly. Lassie, get up quickly." Madame Ma was so happy that she could only show her teeth and not her eyes. She repeatedly asked Qin Yining to get up. Qin Yining smiled and knelt down in front of Yao Chingu and Madame Ma. Then, he took 2 cups of tea from Ji Yun's tray and offered them to the 2 elders respectively. "Your granddaughter-in-law pays her respects to the 2 elders." "Oh, good. Get up quickly." "Yes, get up quickly. Be careful not to hurt your knees." The 2 elders placed the thick, red envelopes on the tray. Qin Yining got up and handed over the 2 pairs of shoes that he had made. "Your granddaughter-in-law's skills are rough. Please don't mind." Chapter 420. Qin Yining couldn't help but be moved. She knew that Madame Ma liked her, and she wasn't a picky old woman who valued the younger generation's feelings more than her craftsmanship. That was why she said that. However, she knew her own needlework very well. It wasn't exquisite, but it was solid. "Mother, please have some tea." Qin Yining took the teacup and knelt in front of Yao Clan to serve tea. Yao Shi smiled as she received the teacup and took a sip. She also gave Qin Yining a large red envelope and an exquisite wooden box with flower carvings. Qin Yining smiled and bowed. "Thank you, Mother." She signaled for Bing Tang to accept the gifts and then offered the embroidered shoes she made for Yao Clan with both hands. Yao Clan took it with a smile. "Thank you. Get up." "Yes. Come sit with grandmother." Madame Ma affectionately took Qin Yining's hand and let her sit next to her. She found this granddaughter-in-law pleasing to the eye. "Good child. I've been waiting for you for a long time, and you've finally married into my family. Now that you're here, Dai Fu will have someone to take care of you. We don't have many masters, but there are many servants. Your mother-in-law and I aren't good at managing these things, so we'll leave them all to you. I understand grandmother's good intentions, but I'm young and inexperienced. I'm afraid that I won't do a good job and embarrass the prince's household." Qin Yining didn't really know how to manage the household. She used to be the young mistress of the household in Dian. She was just afraid that she would take away her mother-in-law's power as soon as she married into the family. Yao Clan smiled and said, "You're a smart child. You'll get used to managing the household as time goes by. If there's anything you're not sure about, you can ask me. I'll tell you a few times, and you'll get used to it. I'm old. Right now, I'm just looking forward to having a grandson. I don't care about anything else." Qin Yining's face turned red. She muttered, "Yes. If there's anything I don't understand, I'll ask Mother." Yao Clan smiled and nodded. "I'll ask Zhao Kun to send the matching tiles to Jinhua Park later." Qin Yining thought for a moment and smiled. "Mother, I have a presumptuous request. Can you lend me Mama Zhao for a while? I don't need her to wait on me in the room. I'm young and my knowledge is limited. There are many things in the manor that I don't understand. With Mama Zhao around, it'll be easier to give me pointers. Also, if I need to pass on a message, Mama Zhao will have more weight." Yao Shi heard this and could not help but look deeply at Qin Yining. Seeing that her eyes were focused and sincere, without any reluctance, he couldn't help but praise her secretly. "S is a smart girl. STS take the initiative." Moreover, Zhao Kun's family was respectable, so she could still use their influence to gain a foothold. T-Tes kill T-Sestes kill. S is killings. T-S. They estes S at night to sest. Yao Shi's heart was truly a little complicated. On one hand, they were happy for their son. Having such a smart wife was a great help to their son. At least, she knew what to do at the right time. On the other hand, they were worried. With such a smart person by their side, it'd be fine if they had a good relationship. But if there were disagreements, they might not win in a battle of wits. Pang Xiao became anxious when he saw Yao Clan's silence. He'd heard that mother-in-law's and daughter-in-law's relationships weren't easy to get along with. He was afraid that if he acted too protective of Qin Yining in front of his mother, it'd make Qin Yining jealous. When he wasn't at home, Qin Yining would be the one in trouble. He could only stand and stare. He couldn't help but guess what the Yao Clan was thinking. Ma Shi couldn't bear to see him procrastinate. She said, "Dai Fu's wife is talking to you. What are you thinking about?" "If Zhao Kun's family is busy, I'll arrange for one of my capable men to go." "Mother, I think it's a good idea to arrange for Zhao Kun's family to go. I'm just thinking that it's not enough to arrange for one person to help Dai Fu's wife. Later, I'll have to gather all the people in the residence and make arrangements." Qin Yining could vaguely guess Yao Clan's thoughts. He just smiled and thanked them. But she wasn't disappointed. After all, strictly speaking, she wasn't familiar with Pang Zhao's family. Naturally, mother-in-law's and mother-in-law's feelings towards the younger generation were different. When she first returned home, her biological mother didn't treat her well. After getting along with her for a long time, weren't they so close that they couldn't bear to part with each other? Time reveals a person's heart. She wasn't scheming against Pang Zhao's family. She believed that the Yao clan would like her in the future. Seeing that they were almost done chatting, Pang Xiao said, "Mother, we still have to go to the palace today to thank His Majesty. We might not come back for lunch." When Yao clan heard the words "enter the palace," They became nervous for Pang Xiao, thinking of their son's identity. If Pang Xiao went to war in the future, the women in their family would be invited to the palace to stay for a while. It was a good thing to have such a smart daughter-in-law like Qin Yining. As a result, the Yao clan's gaze towards Qin Yining became gentler. Hurry up and tidy up. You can go now. Don't let your majesty blame you if you're late. Yes. Qin Yining stood up and bowed to Yao Qinggu, Ma Shi, and the Yao clan. Then, he followed Pang Xiao out. As soon as the two left, Ma Shi's face fell. Yuping, what did you mean just now? Mother, what are you talking about? Pang Xiao looked at Ma Shi helplessly. Lassie just came in and politely offered you tea and gave you the needlework she made. What kind of airs are you putting on? She's the apple of the eye at home. Does she have to be humble here? Mother, I didn't mean that. I can't wait to like her. I think you do. Lassie asked you for advice and even borrowed Zhao Kuan's family's clothes. That's because she's sensible. She was afraid that as a mother-in-law, you wouldn't be able to put down your pride to plant someone in your son's room. So she took the initiative to invite someone over. You, on the other hand, are putting on airs. Who doesn't know what you're thinking? Are you afraid that your daughter-in-law will have something against you? Yao clan's worries were exposed, and they felt a little uncomfortable. Mother, I'm not afraid of this. I'm just afraid that she won't be able to manage things properly. Come on, I gave birth to you. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You're just afraid that your daughter-in-law is too smart and will be controlled by her in the future. If you two don't get along well, you're afraid that you won't be able to control her. Ma Shi's words exposed the Yao clan's thoughts. Yao Qinggu was smoking on the side, pretending that he couldn't hear the conversation between the mother and son. Yao clan said, Mother, after all, you can't judge a book by its cover. It's not that I don't like her, nor do I want to make things difficult for her. I just have to be wary of others. Wary of others? Ma Shi sneered. You're just scheming. You've worked in a wealthy family before, and you've picked up those bad habits. Scheming against outsiders is because you're capable, but you even do that to your own family. Aren't you tired of living? What's wrong with that child? I think she's good. She's sensible and knows when to advance and when to retreat. Do you think you're very secretive about your thoughts? Even a straightforward mother like me can see through it. That lass is so smart. How can she not see through it? She just has self-restraint and doesn't say anything. Yao clan's face turned red after being criticized by Ma Shi, but they didn't feel that there was anything wrong with being wary. She only had her son to rely on, and her son was now very passionate. How could he control himself in front of such a beauty? She's his mother, so of course she has to keep an eye on him. Seeing that Yao clan was silent, Ma Shi sneered and said, You don't have to be indignant. She's Elas. Although she had a hard life when she was young and didn't enjoy a good life at home, her family used to be a big family in the Dian dynasty. Elas has been taught by her father, so her character is naturally not bad. I heard from Dai Fu that Elas was in charge of the inner chamber before she got married. If you're really afraid of being robbed of your power, I have to say something. In the future, everything will belong to the children. If you keep clenching your fists and refusing to let go, do you think you could take it away? Ma Shi's words had already made Yao clan's face turn red, and they wished they could find a hole to hide in. It was reasonable, but emotionally, she just couldn't control herself. Seeing the Yao clan's reaction, Ma Shi shook her head and nodded. You people of the old Yao clan are all scheming. You think you're smart and can figure out the world, but you can't figure out people's hearts. Yao Qinggu saw that he was implicated and said helplessly, What's wrong with me? You can teach your daughter a lesson, but don't involve me. Ma Shi looked at Yao Qinggu and didn't want to talk nonsense with this old man. She turned around and called Nanny Mi over. Go to Jinhua, court more often, and send some nourishing soup and water to Sister Yi. By the way, see if anyone has angered her. If there is, come back and tell me. I'll teach her a lesson. Nanny Mi was amused. Old madam, you're not ordering me at all. You're educating your daughter. Ma Shi stared at Yao clan and snorted. Yao clan felt helpless and amused, thinking that maybe she was really wrong. She knew that her mother was a straightforward person, but she would never be wrong about people. Maybe she was thinking too much. Qin Yining and Peng Xiao got on the carriage and went to the palace. Sister Yi, are you angry? Peng Xiao held her hand and asked carefully. Qin Yining was very surprised. Why do you ask? Just now my mother was like that. Are you angry? Of course not. Qin Yining laughed. My mother is very good to me. She just gave me a jade bracelet with excellent water source. I've just married into the family, so I'm not familiar with the elders. I'll be familiar with them later. Don't make wild guesses. It seems that my mother bullied me. Hearing this, Peng Xiao couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief secretly. Regardless of who was right and who was wrong in those disputes, the Yao clan gave birth to him. It was not easy for an unmarried woman to raise him. If his wife didn't get along with his mother, he would more or less feel regret in his heart. Of course, if his mother didn't like his wife, he would also feel regret. Fortunately, his sister Yi was generous, and his mother was not a foolish person. As Qin Yining said, after a long time, they might be familiar with each other. They chatted along the way and soon arrived at the palace gate. After changing to the oil wall carriage, they went directly to Yangxin Palace. Chapter 421. It's our fault for making your Majesty and Empress Dowager wait for so long. We were delayed on the way. Peng Xiao smiled and saluted. Li Qitian affectionately put his arm around Peng Xiao's shoulder and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled ambiguously and said, I understand. We are all experienced people. Qin Yining lowered his head at the side. He didn't like Li Qitian pretending to be close to him, but he didn't dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. He just blushed shyly. Peng Xiao and Li Qitian chatted for a while, then took a few steps back and saluted in advance. Seeing Qin Yining's rosy cheeks, Peng Xiao seemed to like something in his heart. He wished he could pull her into his arms and get close to her. However, his face was indifferent. He said in a deep voice, Why are you still standing there? Quickly come and thank your Majesty. When Qin Yining heard Peng Xiao's words, he understood his intention. He lowered his head like a wronged wife and knelt down next to Peng Xiao. They kowtowed to Li Qitian to thank him. Li Qitian carefully observed the two. He saw that Peng Xiao was indifferent to Qin Yining and didn't show too much enthusiasm, so he felt a little better. If Peng Xiao had a father-in-law who had the ability to argue with scholars and a wife who was beautiful and intelligent, then he would have made a mistake. You may dispense with the formalities. If you and your wife can live happily in the future, then it won't be a waste of my painstaking efforts to arrange for you. This subject will remember your Majesty's teachings. Peng Xiao saluted. Qin Yining also said woodenly, Thank you for your Majesty's teachings. Li Qitian's mood improved a lot. He said, Quickly go and kowtow to the Empress Dowager. Jixi will come back after kowtowing. We have something important to discuss with you. Let's have lunch together. Yes, thank you, Your Majesty. Peng Xiao and Qin Yining bowed again and then slowly retreated. When they arrived at the courtyard, Qin Yining did not let down his guard. Who knew how many eyes were watching him from every corner of the palace? Peng Xiao strode behind the little eunuch. Qin Yining lowered his head and followed behind. He kept a certain distance from Peng Xiao. He didn't seem estranged, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Peng Xiao's heart was already bursting with joy. He was thinking about how to praise her intelligence when he returned home, but his face was cold all the time, which made the palace servants who passed by retreat. Not long after, the group arrived at Xian Palace. The eunuch went in to pass on the message. After a while, he came out and bowed. He said respectfully, The Empress Dowager invites Wang Yi and Wang Fei in. Thank you, eunuch. Peng Xiao smiled gently and tipped the eunuch a silver ingot. The eunuch was full of smiles and hurriedly bowed. Thank you, Wang Yi. Xian Palace was the same as before. Peng Xiao went through the caltrip flower door and went straight to the side hall. Qin Yining followed closely behind. When he reached the door of the side hall, he heard the Empress Dowager greeting him warmly. You're here. Where's your wife? Greetings to the Empress Dowager. Qin Yining knelt down and bowed. The Empress Dowager kindly waved her hand. Come, let me take a look. Qin Yining obediently stood up and stood in front of the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager carefully sized him up and said with a smile, I haven't seen you for a few days. Family Qin's lass has become more beautiful. Last time, this Empress Dowager was still thinking about finding a good family for you. I want to find a good home for you young people, and now the fate of the two of you has arrived. It's really worth celebrating. Was the Empress Dowager trying to explain how she messed up the matchmaking last time? Qin Yining couldn't help but sneer inwardly. The Empress Dowager was treating everyone as fools. Last time, she was clearly trying to stir up trouble between Pang Xiao and the aristocratic families. What do you mean by let the young people have a good home? He sure knew how to flatter himself. Thank you, Empress Dowager. Qin Yining shyly lowered his head and didn't want to talk to her. Pang Xiao smiled and asked, How has the Empress Dowager been these days? Have you eaten the food box this subject had someone send in last time? I've eaten it. How could I not eat the food you sent in? The Empress Dowager smiled and said, It's rare for you to be so filial. Pang Xiao smiled and reminded the Empress Dowager to take care of herself. Then he stood up and said, replying to the Empress Dowager, Your Majesty also ordered this subject to go to Yangxin Palace Hall. He said that he has an errand to give this subject instructions. This subject will not stay any longer. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she said reluctantly, You children always have things to do. Forget it. Since it's an important errand, then go quickly. Leave your wife here to chat with me. When you're done, come to my palace for lunch. Pang Xiao smiled and said, I was just about to disturb you. The Empress Dowager smiled and waved at Qin Yining. Come and sit next to me. Let's have a good chat. Don't pay attention to these men. They only know how to be busy. Pang Xiao bowed to the Empress Dowager with a smile and retreated. Before he left, he glanced at Qin Yining worriedly. Although Pang Xiao was very confident in Qin Yining, he couldn't help but worry. A person might not want to hurt a tiger, but the tiger wanted to hurt a person's heart. Then he rejoiced. Fortunately, he fell in love with such an intelligent woman. If an ordinary young lady followed him, she probably wouldn't be able to cope with the endless, unexpected situations. He couldn't be by her side all the time. If he didn't have the ability to protect himself, then what could he do? Fortunately, Qin Yining had experienced great storms. Pang Xiao shook his head and temporarily put aside his worries. He quickly went to Yangxin Palace Hall. The sooner he finished his errand, the sooner he could bring Qin Yining back to the Fu. Qin Yining only cared about accompanying the Empress Dowager and talking. She could even tolerate the old madam's temper. The Empress Dowager was a smart woman. Although they talked about family matters, she might not talk about anything profound. The Empress Dowager was very good at reading people's expressions and knew what to say to make them happy. On one hand, Qin Yining admired the Empress Dowager's ability to handle matters. On the other hand, he thought that perhaps Li Qitian had such a smooth and slick personality and could sit on the throne because of such a mother. However, it was really tiring to feign civility with such an unambitious person. Empress Dowager, Anyang Princess Royal is here. Just as the two were chatting happily, a palace servant came in from outside. Without waiting for the Empress Dowager to answer, Li Heelan's voice came first. Muhu, I heard that you have a guest. Who is it that keeps daughter outside? Li Heelan quickly walked in like a gust of wind. Her smile stiffened when she saw Qin Yining. Qin Yining pretended not to see Li Heelan's expression. He stood up and respectfully bowed. This subject's wife greets Anyang Princess Royal. When Li Heelan heard the words, this subject's wife, it was like someone had poured hot oil on her. Her entire body was burning with anger. This was the Empress Dowager's palace, her Muhu's territory. There was no need to worry about anything else. Moreover, the Empress Dowager had always known about her matters. Li Heelan sneered without any scruples. No need for formalities. This one can't accept your courtesy. When Qin Yining heard this, he was on guard. It seemed that Li Heelan hadn't given up on Pang Xiao. Moreover, he didn't have any scruples in front of the Empress Dowager. Was he planning to embarrass her today? Eldest princess is too serious. You are a princess, and this subject's wife is only the wife of an official. How could you not accept this subject's courtesy? If others knew, they would say that you belittled yourself. If someone with ulterior motives heard this and spread rumors outside, It would affect your prestige. Qin Yining gave a proper bow. Then he stood up with his hands by his side. The Empress Dowager looked at Qin Yining with some surprise. Although her words were not arrogant or rash and her tone was calm, there was no anger at all. However, the Empress Dowager could hear the fierceness in her words. She was afraid that with the eldest princess's temper, she would explode after hearing this. The Empress Dowager wanted to reconcile, but Li Helan sneered first. You must be very proud of being an official's wife, right? That's right. Your father is only a surrendered official from a small country. He couldn't live anymore, so he became this one's imperial brother's vassal. You are the daughter of a surrendered official. If you don't become an official's wife, how will you live? Moreover, you have already been. Li Helan covered her mouth and laughed. The ridicule in her words was very obvious. Qin Yining secretly mocked Li Helan's stupidity. She wanted to show off her power and embarrass her. There were thousands of ways to do it. However, she chose the most inappropriate one. She only thought that the Empress Dowager was her birth mother and would support her. But she never thought that she was brought here by Pang Xiao. If the Empress Dowager didn't want to completely offend Pang Xiao, she naturally wouldn't allow Li Helan to go overboard. Therefore, even if Qin Yining didn't do anything, the Empress Dowager would still stand up for her. Lan don't speak nonsense. The Empress Dowager opened her mouth and looked at Li Helan with a warning look. Li Helan's laughter suddenly stopped, and she looked at the Empress Dowager in disbelief. The Empress Dowager said, "The good wine your imperial brother gave you is for you and the prince consort to eat together, not for you to eat alone. Girl, you're greedy for wine." After eating a few more mouthfuls of wine, you began to speak without restraint. Fortunately, Prince Zhongshuan's consort is not an outsider. Otherwise, Aijiao would like to see what you would do. Li Helan looked at the Empress Dowager's serious face and knew that she shouldn't lose control of her emotions like this. After all, she was no longer in a position to be jealous of Qin Yining. But who would know how wronged and unjust she was feeling in her heart? Imperial Mother has said it. Daughter will listen next time. Li Helan reluctantly admitted defeat. When Qin Yining saw this, he laughed inwardly and was about to suffer internal injuries. However, his expression was very serious as he said, "I didn't think that eldest princess would like to drink. I have a jar of good newer Hong. I'll have someone send it to the princess residence later." Li Helan didn't want any newer Hong at all. However, when she met the Empress Dowager's warning gaze, she still smiled insincerely and said, "Then I'll have to thank you. Eldest princess doesn't need to be so polite." Wang Yi told this subject that in the past, the Empress Dowager treated him like her own son and took good care of him in every possible way. Wang Yi has always been grateful. Now that this subject has married into the family, although I don't have much talent, I can understand Wang Yi's feelings. This is something I can do. This consort advises you to live peacefully and stop before going too far. Don't show off in front of this consort. Li Helan gritted her teeth and almost slapped Qin Yining. Chapter 422. Li Helan gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. She still said that she didn't have anything to show off. To be able to become Pang Zhao's wife, to be able to have this man, this was already the greatest capital. Qin Yining, that bitch, must have done it on purpose. She clearly knew that she wholeheartedly wanted to marry Pang Xiao. Now that she had gotten her wish, she found a way to ridicule her. Li Helan had been doted on since she was a child. There was never anything that she couldn't get when she wanted it. She had received too much in this life and was already used to having it. She was used to being doted on by her mother and brother. But in this life, even if she had thousands of Ru-E, just the fact that she wasn't Ru-E in marriage was enough to make her cry in the middle of the night. Although Prince Consort Ji was handsome, he was too cold to people. Interacting with Prince Consort Ji was like facing an ice sculpture, a wooden person. After they got married, he only fulfilled his duties as the prince consort on the wedding night. After that, he was respectful, polite, and distant to her. Especially after he found out that she went to Madame Lu's place to get along with the Prime Minister. He didn't even look at her. Li Helan heard that Prince Consort Ji even dressed up to attend Pang Zhixin's wedding. He even brought the entire Fu soldiers to help out. He treated his friends better than he treated himself. What was the use of having this kind of marriage? This kind of prince consort would only add to her troubles. She couldn't get the man she wanted. Even if she married an outstanding man, she wouldn't be able to get him. Li Heelan had been suppressed for a long time and was about to explode. Now, looking at the beautiful Qin Yining with her hair combed and hearing her talk about her intimacy with Pang Xiao, how could she stand it? Li Heelan's anger burned more and more. She had already forgotten what the Empress Dowager had just said. Bitch, you're courting death. Li Heelan reached out to grab Qin Yining's neck. Qin Yining was so scared that he quickly dodged. She didn't expect that Li Heelan would dare to attack her in front of her. Perhaps he thought that since this was the Empress Dowager's palace, even if something happened, the Empress Dowager would back him up. Qin Yining's brain spun quickly. Facing a woman who always coveted her husband, she tolerated her again and again. Wasn't she too easy to manipulate? Quick, stop her. The eldest princess is drunk. Don't let her hurt anyone. The Empress Dowager was frightened by Li Heelan's appearance. She was stunned for a while before she remembered to give orders. However, at this moment, Qin Yining was being chased by Li Heelan and accidentally stepped on her skirt, causing her to fall backwards. The floor was covered with a thick carpet, so it didn't hurt when she fell. However, behind her was a square table and 4 embroidered stools. It was a good thing that Qin Yining was lucky and didn't fall on the embroidered stools or the square table. However, there was a thump when she fell, and she cried out in pain. Li Heelan couldn't stop in time and was tripped by Qin Yining's leg. With a scream, she fell forward and fell on the embroidered stools. Her elbow hit the edge of the square table, and she also fell to the ground. Qin Yining was lying on the ground, crying out in pain. Li Heelan was in so much pain that she couldn't say a single word. Her elbow was in so much pain that she couldn't even bend it. Her knee was in so much pain that she couldn't stand it. Seeing Qin Yining right beside her, Li Heelan couldn't take it anymore and charged forward. You bitch, I'll let you show off. I didn't want the Pang Zhishi and gave it to you. What do you have to show off? Poisonous bitch. Cheap wench. If Qin Yining was serious about making a move against Li Heelan would have already fainted. But she had made up her mind not to make a move today and didn't fight back. She was acting like a weak woman being bullied by the eldest princess. The maids and mamas in the Empress Dowager's palace were all stunned by the eldest princess acting like a shrew. Everyone was secretly criticizing her in their hearts. As the eldest princess, Li Heelan was secretly in love with a man and couldn't get him, so her love turned to hate. She could even act so arrogantly in front of his official wife. This was truly shocking. Everyone pulled Li Heelan away and looked at Qin Yining, who had fallen to the ground with her hair tied up. They all felt pity for her. Don't pull me. All of you let go. Li Heelan roared out. The Empress Dowager walked forward and leaned over to grab Li Heelan's chin. She leaned in and said in a deep voice, Wake up. This is my Xian palace. This is not the princess palace where you can act like a drunkard. Li Heelan's chest was violently heaving up and down. Her arms and legs were filled with pain, but she could not suppress the anger in her heart. Mother Empress, even you don't love honor anymore. You always tell me to be obedient, to be obedient. All right, I'll listen. But the result? The result is that I will never be able to obtain the thing I like. My everything will be controlled. I can't even obtain the man I like. What kind of princess am I? You shut up. This widow can see that you've eaten some horse piss and you're speaking nonsense. You like husband G and your royal brother has already given you a marriage. So what are you still not satisfied with? You drank some wine today and went crazy, even mistaking the Prince Zhongshuan's wife for a maid. This widow has been too lenient on you. That's why you become like this. Qin Yining was lying on the ground. She could clearly see the expressions between the Empress Dowager and Li Heelan. The Empress Dowager kept signaling to Li Heelan with her eyes, looking like she was anxious about something. However, Li Heelan did not know how to appreciate it and continued to cause trouble. Today was already a big matter, so it was better to make it bigger. She had to add fuel to the fire. Qin Yining held her forehead and her face was covered in tears as she sobbed. Eldest princess, what are you doing? How did this minister's wife offend you? You actually want to strangle this minister's wife to death? This minister's wife's husband is a loyal and conscientious minister to your majesty. Although this minister's wife is the daughter of a surrendered minister, my father is also your majesty's right-hand man. Eldest princess's actions. Could it be that this minister's wife's family is idle? Could it be that we were wrong to seek refuge with a wise ruler? The Empress Dowager fiercely glared at Qin Yining. This woman did not have good intentions. Her words seemed to be defending her, but every word was clearly provokingly Helan and provoking her to do something even more excessive. The Empress Dowager ordered in a deep voice, "Why aren't you helping the Prince Zhongshuan up? Are you all dead?" Yes. The palace servants came back to their senses after being yelled at by the Empress Dowager. They hurriedly went to help Qin Yining up. However, Qin Yining's face was pale as she held her head. Her body was limp as she leaned against the arm of a palace servant next to her. She looked so weak that she had no one to rely on. Li Helan became more and more irritable as she watched. Her hands were held by the nanny as she sat on the ground and kicked Qin Yining's legs. "I'll let you show off. I'll let you take advantage of me and pretend to be obedient. How could Brother Xiao like a slut like you? Why aren't you dead? Shut up. Why aren't you taking the eldest princess away?" When the Empress Dowager heard Li Helan's outrageous scolding, she was angry and anxious. Her face became even uglier. What kind of daughter did she raise? Because of a man, she was provoked by a poisonous woman and became like this. If this continued, it would alarm others, and it wouldn't be a joke. Don't look at her status as the Empress Dowager. In the end, she was a mother because of her son. If it wasn't for Li Qiqian's care, the Empress Dowager knew that her good days would come to an end. The palace servants went to help Li Helan, and the Empress Dowager turned to help Qin Yining. "Is the princess all right? Quickly get up. The ground is cold." Qin Yining sneered in her heart. Was the Empress Dowager trying to turn a big matter into a small one and a small matter into nothing? Although a large part of what happened today was due to her scheme, the most important reason why Li Helan had been instigated was because she was unwilling to give up. She coveted Pang Xiao and was jealous of her, who had already become a Wang Fei. Since a person's heart had already borne the fruit of malice, then everything she saw was malice. She was tricked because of herself, so there was no need to be lenient. But even though Li Helan was like this, the Empress Dowager didn't have any intention of educating her, and was even deliberately favoring her. Did she really think that she was a soft persimmon that would be bullied by the Empress Dowager in Xian Palace? Qin Yining looked at the Empress Dowager with unfocused eyes and said with a smile, replying to the Empress Dowager, "This minister's wife is fine." The Empress Dowager's heart calmed down a bit. She secretly thought that Qin Yining was quite sensible. Just as she ordered people to help Qin Yining up, she saw her body sway. Her eyes rolled back and her face turned pale as she fell backwards. The Empress Dowager was shocked by Qin Yining's actions. She had clearly seen that Qin Yining had fallen while being chased, but she hadn't hit the table or chair. But her current fainted appearance didn't seem fake at all. The Empress Dowager was truly anxious at this time. If something happened to Qin Yining, there was no need to say what Pang Xiao would do. Li Qiqian was currently using Pang Xiao and Qin Huaiyuan as an important position. In the end, their newlywed wife and daughter had such an accident in Xi'ai and Palace and were even bullied by the eldest princess. If this spread out, how would the eldest princess live in the future? How would she, the Empress Dowager, live in the future? How would she face Li Qiqian? Quickly call the imperial physician. The Empress Dowager didn't have time to care about Li Helan and ordered people, quickly carry the princess to the bed. Empress Dowager, an old mama said after some consideration, "We don't know why the princess fainted, so it's best not to move her." Well, she was too frightened, because if her heart palpitates, moving her like this could easily kill her. The Empress Dowager was reminded and recovered. She quickly nodded and said, "You're right. Aijiao was too anxious and neglected this." Then let the princess lie down and wait for the imperial physician to come. Yes. Hearing the conversation between the Empress Dowager and the palace maids and seeing Qin Yining lying down, Li Helan, whose hand were restrained, suddenly began to cry. She was like a child who had lost her way. I don't care. Imperial Mother, you only know how to bully me. Why don't you think more about your daughter? How many benefits has this cheap woman given Imperial Mother? Don't you remember that I'm your daughter? Before the Empress Dowager could refute her, there was a sudden sound of voices coming from outside. A chamberlain loudly announced, Your Majesty has arrived. Prince Consort Ji has arrived. Prince Zhongshuan has arrived. Li Helan's crying suddenly stopped. The Empress Dowager's face was also ashen. Pang Xiao and Ji Ziyu followed behind Li Qitian. Seeing Qin Yining lying on the ground, Pang Xiao was so scared that his hands turned cold. He anxiously said, What happened? Wasn't he fine just now? Chapter 423. Cause and Effect in Reality. The three of them had heard Li Helan's angry roar from outside the hall. Li Qitian pretended not to hear because his younger sister was so fickle and had been caught red-handed by the two parties. It was too embarrassing. Pang Zhao's attention was completely focused on Qin Yining, who had fainted on the ground. He was so frightened that his soul almost flew away. He had no time to care about anything else. Ji Ziyu looked deeply at Li Helan and then stood behind Li Qitian. He was unwilling to say another word, and his expression was unprecedentedly stiff. The Empress Dowager's hands were cold, but she still had a proper and noble smile on her face. She said, It's like this. Anyang drank some wine and became drunk. He said some drunken things. Wang Fei fell because she wasn't paying attention. She might have knocked herself out. Aijia has already sent for the imperial physician. Pang Zhao's fists were tightly clenched behind his back. If he hadn't forced himself to calm down, he probably would have cursed out loud. His good wife had been healthy when she had just been sent over. She knew how to cooperate with him. He had just walked away for a short while, and she had collapsed like this. Pang Xiao strode forward and half carried Qin Yining, letting her rest her head on his arm. He wanted to show concern, but he didn't dare to show it too obviously for fear of arousing more suspicion. Therefore, the onlookers saw Pang Xiao holding Qin Yining in his arms with a gloomy face. Everyone couldn't tell if he was worried about his wife or if he felt that his dignity had been violated. Li Helan had already calmed down by now. Because he was too angry just now, he had yelled and screamed so loudly that his head was still buzzing. But because she had calmed down and regained her rationality, she seemed to have caused a great disaster. Her words had been heard by Prince Consort Ji. Li Helan's heart was in a mess. He carefully glanced at Ji Ziyu and realized that Ji Ziyu was still as cold as usual. It was as if even if the sky were to fall, he would still have the same expression. Li Helan felt his heart turn cold. During this period of time, she had ordered people to deliver food boxes, clothes, and embroidery to Ji Ziyu. She was afraid that all her efforts to please him had gone to waste. She didn't know if Ji Ziyu had heard her just now. If she heard it, she might not have the chance to win this man's heart in this lifetime. How could men like Ji Ziyu and Pang Xiao, who were brave men who killed enemies on a battlefield, tolerate their wives constantly thinking about someone else and making such a big fuss? This was equivalent to slapping Ji Ziyu's mouth, and it was done in front of an outsider. The reason why Ji Ziyu remained silent was because she was the eldest princess and he was the prince consort of Princess Shang. If it wasn't for this identity, she would have received a divorce letter a long time ago. Li Helan looked at Ji Ziyu's handsome face and then looked at Pang Xiao, who was squatting on the ground and hugging Qin Yining without saying a word. For a moment, she felt like the chicken had flown away and the eggs had been broken. The imperial physician is here. Just as everyone's mind was racing, the imperial physician had already been dragged in by the eunuchs. When he saw that Your Majesty and the two gods of war were here, the imperial physician was so frightened that he knelt down with a plop. This old official give no need for formalities. Quickly take a look at the princess consort. Yes. Hearing the urgency in Li Qitian's voice, the imperial physician didn't dare to delay and hurried to Qin Yining's side to treat him. On the way here, the eunuch who invited him had already hinted at the Empress Dowager's intentions. The imperial physician originally wanted to follow the Empress Dowager's instructions. But who would have thought that the two former commanders-in-chief of the country's two armies, the fiendish Wang Yi and the prince consort, would stare at him so fixedly? Even your majesty was eyeing him covetously from the side. For a moment, the imperial physician didn't know how to respond. If he listened to the Empress Dowager, he might offend others. If he didn't listen, he might not offend others, but he would offend the Empress Dowager. This matter, no matter what he did, it would be wrong. Seeing the sweat on the imperial physician's forehead, Pang Xiao gritted his teeth in worry and asked in a low voice, "How is she?" The imperial physician's heart skipped a beat, and he blurted out, "The princess consort's body is fine." Perhaps she was agitated and suddenly fainted. This, after speaking a few times, he remembered the Empress Dowager's instructions, and his face paled in shock. Pang Xiao asked, "What agitation?" It's emotions." The imperial physician didn't dare to look into the Empress Dowager's eyes and stammered, "Extreme anger, extreme sadness, extreme joy, all of these can cause emotional fluctuations. It's not strange that she fainted because of this." He had already told the truth, and he couldn't change it now. The imperial physician could only bite the bullet and tell the truth. So that's how it is. Pang Xiao turned to look at the Empress Dowager and Li Helan. "It seems that my humble wife didn't faint because of a collision. Since there isn't anything serious, this subject will take her back." The last sentence was directed at Li Qitian. Li Qitian was so angry that his face was ashen. But he had no reason to refuse Pang Xiao's request. He didn't have anyone in the cabinet. The only person who could speak for him was Pang Xiao. At this point, he still wanted to rope in Pang Xiao to do great things. He didn't expect that the two troublemakers in the inner palace would lie through their teeth and offend him. Since there isn't anything serious, it's good to take her back to the Fu to recuperate. Li Qitian nodded in concern. Pang Xiao picked up Qin Yining. He suddenly thought of something and looked down to ask the nervous imperial physician, "This imperial physician, since you have seen my humble wife's pulse, I will have to trouble you to take care of my humble wife's pulse in the future." The words caused the imperial physician's anxious heart to fall back to its original place. Because Pang Xiao wanted him to take care of Wang Fei's pulse. Even if the Empress Dowager was angry, she wouldn't dare to harm his life. The imperial physician understood that Pang Xiao was protecting him because he had spoken the truth and was afraid that he would be affected. The imperial physician hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, this old one will do his best." Pang Xiao nodded and then looked at the Empress Dowager and the tear-stained Li Helan. This king really wants to know why a person who was fine when he was brought into the palace this morning suddenly fainted when he was talking with the Empress Dowager and Anyang Princess Royal in Xian Palace. Also, what did Anyang Princess Royal say? That she went crazy after eating too much. In his anger, Pang Xiao's dark tone made people feel like they were suffocating. Even Li Qitian, as the emperor, felt a wave of pressure that was hard to conceal. The Empress Dowager and Princess Royal were two women and didn't dare to meet Pang Xiao's murderous gaze. In order to ease the awkward atmosphere, Li Qitian ordered people to prepare carriages and horses. He also ordered the imperial physician to treat Qin Yining. The imperial physician acknowledged and then followed Pang Xiao, who was carrying Qin Yining out of Xian Palace. When Pang Xiao's figure was far away, only the Empress Dowager, Li Helan, Jiziyu, and Li Qitian were left in Xian Palace. Li Qitian finally angrily flipped over the table. Cups, plates, and teacups fell to the ground, and the broken porcelain let out a sharp scream, making people even more irritated. "What's going on? Didn't we say that Pang Zhishi is one of our trusted officials, and we still want to use him? Why are you bullying his wife? What are you thinking? Are you deliberately dragging us down and making us look bad?" "Imperial brother, you misunderstood. It's true that Lan drank a bit of wine and couldn't control her emotions. That Qin clan member was still randomly showing off in front of Lan. Even if she fainted from anger, that's her own business. You still dare to quibble?" Li Qitian angrily snorted. "Do you think everyone is blind and stupid? You're insulting two of our trusted officials. What do you want us to do? We value Ji Lan and want to become a family member, so we chose him to be your son-in-law. What's wrong with Jilon? HM? With his military exploits that shook the Tatar Empire, his outstanding ability and appearance, how is he not a good match for you? Speak. Li Qiqian had always doted on Li Helan and rarely lost his temper at him, especially now that there were other people present. Li Helan was shocked by Li Qiqian's question. His lips trembled as he fearfully said, "No, Imperial brother, you misunderstood." The son-in-law also misunderstood. "I didn't mean that." "That's right. Anyang is indeed not that kind of girl. Emperor, you're Anyang's brother and practically watch her grow up. Don't you know what kind of person she is?" The Empress Dowager hastily tried to smooth things over. Li Qiqian was so angry that he was about to explode. At this time, he didn't care that the Empress Dowager was his mother and immediately said, "If it weren't for you spoiling her, would she have become like this? You can't have her, so you begin to be cynical and feel that everyone in the world owes you. You can't share my burdens, and you're causing trouble everywhere. What use do we have for a younger sister like you?" "Your Majesty." The Empress Dowager heard this, and her face turned green. Could it be that Li Qiqian wanted to kill Li Helan? The Empress Dowager pulled Li Qiqian's hand. "Your Majesty, don't be impulsive. Lan is your younger sister." "Yes, she is our younger sister, but what did she help us with? She can't do anything well, and she's causing trouble everywhere." Li Qiqian walked in front of Li Helan and pointed at her nose as he scolded, "I chose a husband for you, but you don't live your life well. Instead, you talk nonsense and even have the courage to fight with the wife of an official of the court. It's not for anything else, but to fight for her husband. Do you not have any face if this is spread out? If you don't have any face, we'll lose face for you." "Royal brother." Li Helan looked at Li Qiqian in disbelief and sobbed. "Royal brother, how can you say this to Lan Er? Do we say something wrong? Whether we're right or not, you know best in your heart. From now on, you'll scram back to the eldest princess palace and reflect on your mistakes behind closed doors. Every day, you'll copy the woman's precepts until we're satisfied before you come out. If you perform well and regain your previous understanding, we'll let you out. Otherwise, you'll have to copy the woman's precept for the rest of your life. Do you hear me?" Li Helan felt like she had been struck by lightning and her body swayed. But Jiziu looked down like he didn't see anything. Even if Li Helan was by his side, he wouldn't reach out to help her. "Royal brother, Lan doesn't want it. Lan doesn't want it. Don't want it? You want to go against the decree?" Li Qiqian asked with a calm face. Li Helan began to tremble in fear. Chapter 424. Li Helan stood there in a daze, as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out in an instant. His body swayed, and finally, he couldn't help but fall to the ground. She raised her head and looked at Li Qiqian with tears in her eyes. "Finally," she said in a dry voice, "Chunmei obeys." Li Qiqian coldly snorted. If you had known what Chunmei means earlier and what obeys means, things wouldn't have developed to this point. Think about it carefully. "Someone come." Li Guanwen bowed his head and stepped forward to salute. "This servant is here." Write double quotation mark. "Send Anyang Princess Royal back to the Princess Royal residence. Arrange for 2 of Zhen's nannies to serve the Princess Royal. In addition, arrange for 20 guards to be in groups of 10 to protect the Princess Royal." This meant that they were going to keep Li Helan under surveillance like a criminal. Li Guanwen saluted and gave a meaningful glance to the palace servants. The palace servants immediately came to help Li Helan get up and leave. The Empress Dowager's heart ached and her eyebrows jumped. "Emperor, aren't you going too far by doing this?" Li Qiqian heard this and narrowed his eyes dangerously. "Imperial mother, although Aken is your son, I was also the Emperor of Dezhou. Aken is so busy every day for the country. Pang Zhishi is your son's backbone. He just got married, and in the blink of an eye, something like this happened right under Jin's nose. Shouldn't Zhen give him an explanation? You should give him an explanation, but you shouldn't treat your younger sister like this. So, Imperial Mother means that Zhen should blame the person who led Anyang astray, right?" Li Qiqian was usually very gentle and filial to the Empress Dowager, so the Empress Dowager had almost forgotten her son's original temperament. Li Qitian's gloomy eyes looked over, and the Empress Dowager's heart trembled. That dragged out, "Is that so?" was like a knife stabbing in her flesh. That chill and fear made her shiver all over. Seeing the Empress Dowager like this, Li Qitian's anger was somewhat extinguished. He said, "The Empress Dowager is already in her prime. There are many things that shouldn't be overworked. Sun will order people to repair the Buddha Hall in Xi'an Palace for you. In the future, Empress Dowager will worship Bodhisattva more, recite scriptures, cultivate your body and mind, and also pray for longevity. Sun is now the ruler of the world. I will definitely use the world to provide for Empress Dowager. The premise is that you have to live for a long time. What do you think?" Empress Dowager widened her eyes in disbelief. What Li Qitian meant was for her to stay in the temple and recite Buddhist scriptures in the future, and not to come out and meddle in the affairs of the outside world. After putting Li Helan in solitary confinement, he came to put her under house arrest. Empress Dowager roared in her heart. She was his mother. If she had known that her son would one day become such an unfilial son, she would rather Li Qitian than be the emperor. However, the Empress Dowager still retained some rationality at this moment. What's more, Li Helan was indeed in the wrong today. Li Helan's behavior of eating from the pot and looking at the basin was indeed fickle. The most embarrassing thing was that she was caught by the prince consort in front of her. It was the father's fault for not teaching her well. The eldest princess had a problem with her character, so it was naturally the Empress Dowager's fault for not teaching her well. The Empress Dowager was worried about her future, but she also had to worry about the relationship between Li Helan and Jiziyu. However, the emperor was in a rage, so the Empress Dowager did not dare to persuade Jiziyu. She could only say with a calm face, "The emperor is right." That's good. Imperial Mother can enjoy life in Xi'an Palace. After Li Qitian said this, he took a deep look at the palace servants kneeling in the palace. "Take these people one by one and ask them about today's matter." After giving the order, he turned and left, not even giving the Empress Dowager a chance to plead. The Empress Dowager looked at Li Qitian's back, and tears fell down like a broken string of beads. What kind of sin did she commit? Percent Pang, Xiao carried Qin Yining all the way out of Xi'an Palace. The little eunuch had already prepared a carriage for them. He carried her onto the carriage and sat in it himself. Pang Xiao ordered the little eunuch, "Prepare a stretcher for this imperial physician." The eunuch immediately prepared it. The group of people quickly walked out of the palace. Qin Yining lay in the swaying carriage. She felt Pang Xiao grabbing her left hand the whole time. His fingers were constantly exerting force. He should be extremely worried. She thought that although this was the palace and it was inconvenient to talk in the carriage, she could still give him some hints. Qin Yining held Pang Xiao's hand back and squeezed it hard. She then used her fingers to scratch his palm. Pang Xiao's eyes suddenly widened. His brain, which had stopped working because of her fainting, finally started working again. There must be a reason why Qin Yining pretended to faint. In any case, she wasn't really sick or injured. Although he was so scared that his heart almost jumped out his chest, and he didn't feel good. As long as she was fine, it was fine. Pang Xiao gently rubbed her eyes with his fingers, indicating that she could open her eyes. Qin Yining wasn't sure if anyone would discover that she was still jumping around. She only dared to open her eyes after receiving Pang Xiao's signal. She looked around with her big eyes and finally fixed her gaze on Pang Xiao's handsome face. She couldn't help but reveal a big smile. The ice and snow melted and the spring river was warm. Pang Xiao felt that his mood, which had been cloudy just a moment ago, was now clear and boundless. As long as he saw her smiling face, he couldn't help but smile. His large hand gently pinched the tip of her nose and said silently, "Little rascal." Qin Yining blinked her long eyelashes and smiled as she rubbed her cheek against his leg. At this moment, the carriage slowly stopped. Qin Yining immediately closed her eyes and continued to pretend to faint. "Wang Yi, we've arrived at the palace gates." "Yes." Pang Xiao got out of the carriage with Qin Yining in his arms and changed into the carriage of the Wang mansion. "Who's he?" Bing Tang and others saw that Qin Yining was carried here with an imperial physician by her side. They knew that something must have happened in the palace and were scared out of their wits. The carriage rushed all the way back to the Wang mansion. Pang Xiao directly ordered someone to drive the carriage to the second gate and carried Qin Yining all the way back to Jinhua Garden. He put her on the bed and let the imperial physician treat her. After the imperial physician saw Qin Yining, he found that she was fine except for anemia and weakness. He repeated the conclusion just now and then went to prescribe medicine. When there were no outsiders in the room, Pang Xiao whispered to Huzi, "Go and tell old master, Madame Dowager and Madame Dowager that there is nothing wrong here. We'll talk about the rest later when we meet them." Huzi caught the word "we" and immediately understood. He hurriedly rushed to pass the message. He knew how much Madame Dowager liked the princess. If she knew that the princess fell ill in Xi'an Palace, she would directly kill her way into the palace to find an explanation. The imperial physician's surname was Liu. After the diagnosis and treatment, Pang Xiao sent him out. "Don't worry, imperial physician Liu. In the future, you can come here regularly to check the princess's pulse. She will be fine." Imperial physician Liu said gratefully, "I'm very grateful for Wang Ye's kindness." "You're welcome." Pang Xiao asked Xiaoyu to send imperial physician Liu out. Xiaoyu understood and naturally gave him a big red envelope. When Pang Xiao returned to the room, Qin Yining had already sat up with the quilt. She stretched her neck and looked outside. She lowered her voice and said, "Have the outsiders all left?" This sentence inexplicably touched the soft part of Pang Xiao's heart. He sat on the edge of the bed and hugged Qin Yining, saying, "They've all left. What happened just now? Do you know that when I saw you lying on the ground unconscious, I was so scared that my soul almost flew away? If something happened to you because of my negligence, I don't want to live anymore. I'll just go with you." Qin Yining hugged Pang Xiao's neck and rubbed her cheek on his shoulder and neck. "Don't be afraid. It's really okay. It's just that I don't like Princess Royal of Anyang's face. She has always been sarcastic." After saying this, Qin Yining left Pang Xiao's embrace. She looked at him and said, "This matter was caused by you. Princess Royal of Anyang has deep feelings for you. Seeing us get married, she couldn't sit still. She just happened to see me today and naturally wanted to know about the matters between us. Her heart was filled with jealousy, so she wanted to mess with me." Qin Yining tapped Pang Xiao's cheek and said, "Tell me, did you bring this here?" Pang Xiao coughed and said, "I never brought her here. Back then, when she was still young, I only treated her as a little sister. Now, she's just a little sister who has grown up. Moreover, even her older brother is estranged from me. How could I have anything to do with her? I know there's nothing to do with you, but she scolded me very badly." Qin Yining told him everything that had happened in Xi'an Palace in detail. "So you pretended to be unconscious because you wanted to use this matter to make Anyang completely leave? The one who knows me best is Wang Yi." Qin Yining said with a smile, "Even if there is nothing between you two, she is Prince Consort Ji's wife on one hand and also covets my husband on the other. Do you think I will let her off so easily? This kind of personality is really a loss to the imperial family style." "You're right." Pang Xiao knew that he was in the wrong and didn't dare to make a move. He only chatted with Qin Yining. Qin Yining received encouragement and propped himself up, saying, "Right now, my only hope is that Prince Consort Ji won't feel too bad about what Li Helan has done." Hearing this, Pang Xiao felt a wave of sadness in his heart. He was his good brother, so he naturally understood his personality. She had the ability, the looks, and the martial arts. She was also the commander of the Dragon Legion. How was she not worthy of Li Helan? She was such a wanton woman. Pang Xiao felt that letting Li Helan get close to Jiziyu even once was an insult to Jiziyu. However, what made Pang Xiao the most sad was that Your Majesty's preference for Jiziyu was becoming more and more obvious. Jiziyu was becoming more and more helpless around Your Majesty. His wife had such a noble status, but he couldn't say anything even if he did something wrong. Pang Xiao thought about it carefully and felt sad for his good brother. Qin Yining got off the ground and said, "I want to go and pay my respect to my mother and grandmother. I'm afraid that the commotion just now was too big and scared them. I've already made the arrangements and asked someone to pass on the message. You don't have to worry about this. Qin Yining smiled and said, Others will say it. It's filial for us to say it ourselves. Seeing her like this, Pang Xiao could only listen to her. Chapter 425. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's complexions turned grave when they heard the words Earth Dragon overturning body. 30 years ago, there was a major earthquake in Beiji. At that time, more than 500,000 people in the two prefectures were homeless. In addition, the summer weather was hot and rainy, so the corpses buried in the ruins became infected in the hot and humid environment. There was also a lot of ruins that couldn't be cleaned up in time. In the end, it led to a major epidemic. That loss greatly damaged Beiji's vitality. It took a long time for everything to settle down, and the already empty state treasury became even more empty. Pang Xiao asked anxiously, Is there any report on the situation of the earthquake? Huzi shook his head and said, We don't have the exact statistics yet, but starting from the old capital of Great Yin in the south all the way to the north, 3 cities have been affected by the tremors. The tremors in the old capital have not stopped for 2 days. 3 cities? Isn't Tai City included? Qin Yining frowned. Tai City was where she grew up, and she still missed it. Huzi nodded. It should be included. However, Tai City is still far from the old capital of the Yin dynasty, so it shouldn't be a big problem. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The chaos of war had just ended, and such a major disaster had occurred. The Great Zhou dynasty, which appeared glamorous on the surface, actually had an empty treasury. His Majesty's internal funds had basically been used up, so what could he use to provide disaster relief? How could they spare the energy to deal with the aftermath of the disaster? It was true that Pang Xiao was on guard against Li Qitian's trap. However, Pang Xiao was most worried about the safety of the people. Dian is really plagued with disasters. Huzi couldn't help but sigh. I thought that everything would gradually get better, but I didn't expect the earthquake to happen again. Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh. Natural disasters and man-made disasters are the people who suffer. Pang Xiao also frowned worriedly. He could not help but think about how to deal with this matter. The two of them did not want to bring their emotions to the old man. Therefore, when he arrived at the Pine Crane Hall, he acted as usual. As soon as Qin Yining entered the door, Madame Ma came out to greet her. She took her hand and sized her up before letting out a long sigh and saying, They said that it was Dai Fu who carried you back. When I heard it, I was scared out of my wits. Huzi also said that you were fine, but when I asked him, he couldn't say anything. Fortunately, you were fine. Did something happen in the palace? Why did you faint all of a sudden? Qin Yining glanced at Pang Xiao. Seeing that he seemed somewhat uncomfortable, Qin Yining didn't mention Li Heelan's matter. He only said, It's nothing serious. He's just a little anemic. Plus, he was nervous when replying to the Empress Dowager, so he fainted. The imperial physician had examined her and said that she was fine. She'll be fine after a period of recuperation. The Yao clan and Yao Qinggu were very suspicious. Just now, they had been sizing up Qin Yining. When they saw her glance at Pang Xiao and then say this, they were certain that she was not telling the truth. Yao Qinggu thought that perhaps the situation outside was not good. Qin Yining did not want her elders to be frightened. The Yao clan was suspicious. They felt that Qin Yining looked a little guilty. Madame Ma held Qin Yining's hand worriedly and said, Look at your cold hands. Anemia is not a small matter. You're still young. What will happen when you get older? Fortunately, we discovered it early. You can start recuperating now. You'll be fine after a period of recuperation. Yes, thank you, grandmother. Qin Yining looked at Madame Ma gratefully. She held her hand and shook it. Qin Yining had never received the care of her elders since she was young. Needless to say, the old dowager was no exception. In the past, when they were in Dian, her grandmother, Madame of Dinggua, had a relationship with her. Although there was true love between them, there was also a conflict of interest. When she first returned to the Fu and did not receive her mother's love, her grandmother advised her mother to treat her better. However, it was not because her grandmother liked her, but because her grandmother wanted to find a way to stabilize her mother's position. Madame Ma was one of those people who treated her well for no reason. Qin Yining was very sensitive to people's malice and hostility. She was also very sensitive to people's kindness. At that time, it was not confirmed that she would marry Pang Xiao, but Madame Ma already felt like an old friend to her at first sight. Silly child, you're family. There's no need to thank me. You're also pitiful. You've been living with my Dai Fu at such a young age. Madame Ma took Qin Yining's hand and went to sit on the big Kong bed by the window. If you have anything you want to eat in the future, just tell them and ask them to make it. If Dai Fu treats you badly or dares to bully you, just tell me. I'll help you beat him up. Pang Xiao couldn't help but feel amused when he saw how well his grandmother treated Qin Yining. He moved closer to Madame Ma and said shamelessly, "My status is getting lower and lower now. Grandmother only dotes on Sister E now. She doesn't dote on me anymore. Go away, you wild boy. You're so thick-skinned that you don't even know the pain of being pricked by a needle. Our girl, E, is delicate and soft. Of course I dote on her." Madame Ma smiled and pushed Pang Xiao's face away. Qin Yining burst into laughter when he heard this. Yao Qinggu, who was smoking a cigarette at the side, was also amused. Only the Yao clan had a faint smile on their faces. Qin Yining chatted with Madame Ma for a while, then said with a smile, "Since it's still early, I plan to summon the servants to the front hall for a chat. Grandmother, what do you think?" Madame Ma nodded with a smile. Just as she was about to agree, Yao clan said, "There's no hurry. You're not feeling well, so you should rest well. Anyway, the matters in the mansion have already become a system. You can slowly get used to it. The most important thing is still your health." Your mother-in-law is right. Madame Ma agreed when she heard this. "I almost forgot after talking for a while. You should go back and rest. I'll ask them to send you some tonic soup later." Qin Yining nodded with a smile. He didn't take Yao clan's vague hostility to heart. He just nodded obediently and said, "Okay, then I'll take my leave first. Go back and rest well." Qin Yining stood up and bowed to Yao Qinggu, Madame Ma, and the Yao clan. Pang Xiao looked deeply at the Yao clan. When the Yao clan and Yao Qinggu looked at her at the same time, she suddenly smiled and said, "Grandfather, Mother, actually, I don't want Sister E to be too tired. Why don't we just let Sister E manage Jinhua Park in the future? Since Mother also can't stay idle, then we'll let Mother manage the rest of the mansion. In the future, Jinhua Park will be separated from the rest of the mansion and do things on their own." Yao clan's expression changed when they heard this. "Dai Fu, what do you mean?" "It doesn't mean anything. It's just the literal meaning. Mother's body is healthy and strong. Managing the various courtyards of the mansion is also a pastime. Sister E is still young and weak. You should take care of Sister E and help your son." Pang Xiao smiled and turned around to instruct Zhao Kuin's family. "You don't need to listen to the princess consort's orders. In the future, you don't need to go to Jinhua Park. Just let the princess consort take charge of Jinhua Park." Zhao Kuin's family looked hesitantly at the Yao clan. Yao clan's face turned green and said, "Jinhua Park is also part of the mansion. It's against the rules to take the Jinhua Park alone. Mother, rules are made by people. Sister E may not have experience, but she's more than enough to manage Jinhua Park. This way, you don't need to use the people around Mother. Mother also can't leave Zhao Kuin's family." Qin Yining frowned when he heard this. She knew that the Yao clan was somewhat guarded and hostile towards her, especially after she almost took over the affairs of the mansion. She could understand that the Yao clan didn't trust her and didn't want to give up power. She just thought that time would tell. She would let the Yao clan acknowledge her. If they didn't want power, then so be it. But she didn't expect that Pang Xiao would stand up for her. According to Pang Xiao's words, wouldn't Jinhua Park and the other courtyards of the mansion be fighting for themselves? If this spread out, it would seem that they were separated. It wasn't easy for the Yao clan to raise Pang Xiao. Their son just got married, and yet he was helping his daughter-in-law to fight for power. Wouldn't the Yao clan be angrier and hate her more? However, Pang Xiao had good intentions. He just couldn't bear to see her being bullied. Qin Yining pursed her lips and looked at Madame Ma and Yao Chengu for help. She could see that Ma Shi was an emotional person. She handled matters quickly and straightforwardly. Yao Chengu and Yao Shi were the same type of people. They were both shrewd types. The only difference was that Yao Chengu was older and had seen through the world. He was also a man, so he was more rational, open-minded. After all, the Yao clan was a woman. She used to be a maidservant in the Pang family. Although Qin Yining didn't want to doubt the Yao clan's character, the younger generation didn't know how the Yao clan had a Pang Xiao with Pang Zhongjing and how they were driven away by Madame Pang. But at least it showed that the Yao clan's success in gaining power and protecting their son was definitely not just based on a beautiful face. This kind of Yao clan knew too much about the scheming among the rich and powerful families. They were also used to fighting for power. It could be said that they knew more examples of insidious methods than Yao Chengu. Her daughter-in-law stole her son and came to fight for power. She was afraid that she wouldn't have a place to settle down in the future. Naturally, she wanted to hold on to power. Qin Yining's anxious face was pale. Madame Ma felt a burst of pain in her heart. She always felt that her daughter cared too much about some things. Now that she was making things difficult for her new daughter-in-law and had her own son resist, she must feel bad in her heart, right? But Qin Yining, who was sandwiched in the middle, felt even worse. All right, let's do as Dai Fu says. Yao Chengu put down his tobacco pipe and said, let he get used to it first. Let her get used to it. When she gets better, she can slowly take over. Yao Chengu's words of getting used to it obviously had a hidden meaning. Pang Xiao understood and nodded. I think so too. It will take some time to get used to it. In this way, it's not a bad thing to let Sister Yi learn from it. Then it's settled. Zhao Kuin's family will send the matching cards to Jinhua Park later. This grandson will take his leave. Pang Xiao bowed to Yao Chengu and Madame Ma again. Then, he took Qin Yining's hand and strode out. As soon as he went out, Yao Clan's tense body relaxed. His shoulders drooped and he sobbed. This is what it means to forget your mother after marrying a wife. Sister Yi is good, but he can't. Chapter 426. Yao clan members blushed at her mother's reprimand and didn't know how to refute. Madame Ma was so angry that she spilled the beans and told them everything that had happened in the past. Lass, you think you're smart, but do you think everyone around you is a fool? You've never been obedient to your mother. If I didn't let you be a maidservant in a rich family, it's not like our family can't afford to raise you, but you insisted on going to see the world. What happened in the end? You've wasted your whole life. You were bragging a few days ago that you were used to seeing those tasteless old ladies in the Pang residence, and that you would never be an evil mother-in-law. But look at what you've done. It's true that our Dai Fu is in a high position and powerful, but think about it. How many good families would marry their daughters to power? Minister Qin is a figure like Zhuge Liang. The reason why he chose our family was not for the power of the Dai Fu. If he wanted power, he would enter the palace in the future. Why would he exchange it for the pearl in his hand? Look at your son's bad debts. Dai Fu is a good child, but who wouldn't be afraid of marrying him? When Dai Fu went to war, we were worried at home, afraid that something would happen to him. Have you forgotten how it felt? There are so many enemies targeting Dai Fu, and your majesty is one of them. Have you forgotten that we were taken as hostages? Look at him now. He went to the palace to pay his respects on the second day of his marriage, but he could go in vertically and come back horizontally. Do you really believe that Lass E is anemic when she says she's anemic? That's because she's sensible and doesn't want us to worry. Your son is so poor, and Lassie has suffered so much after marrying into the family. Instead of treating her better, you're fighting with her. You're in your 40s after all. How long will you be able to grow up? How long will you be sensible? Madame Ma scolded so much in one breath. When she thought of the past in her early years, she was really angry and bitter. She had been straightforward and upright all her life and had never harmed anyone. Naturally, she didn't like those scheming people. Yet, her daughter had such a personality. She was bad, but she wasn't an evil person. However, she was kind, but she had those crooked thoughts that she had since she came back from a rich family. His perspective on everything was different from before. The Yao clan listened to their mother's scolding. She started from the time when she talked about the time when she was a maidservant of the Pang family. He began to weep silently. In the end, her tears fell like rain. Mother, even though I was wrong in the past, I was wrong. However, her daughter had no other choice. To tell you the truth, I like Pang Zhongjing, but our family is just an ordinary family. Other than being a maidservant of the Pang family, what else can I do? Although I didn't get a status, I have a Dai Fu, the son of Pang Zhongjing, and I. You still have a reason? Mrs. Ma was stunned by the Yao clan's words. Just because you like him, you want to be his maid? Are you willing to be a bedwarmer? Madame Ma almost slapped her. Yao Chengu reacted quickly and stopped his wife. All right, it's been so many years. Furthermore, with Dai Fu around, there is hope for our future. This is not a bad thing. Aren't we talking about Yi's matter now? Mrs. Ma glared at the Yao clan while panting and said angrily, what else is there to say about Yi's matter? She married into our family and was unlucky to have such a mother-in-law. Don't blame your son for falling out with you. I get angry just looking at you. The Yao clan lowered her head and wiped her tears after being scolded. Mrs. Ma was even more displeased. She got up angrily and went to the courtyard, where she found a cudgel and began to brandish it. She brandished the cudgel ferociously. Only Yao Chengu and the Yao clan were left in the room. The Yao clan finally sobbed and said, Father, please be reasonable. Is Mother right to say all those things about me? Let's not talk about Dafu's matters. Just the treatment of the Qin family's girl. How could I not feed her and clothe her? I didn't say that I wouldn't give her that pair of cards. It's just that she just married into the family. She should have given me time to see her character, right? In the end, Dai Fu did it. In short, he almost said that he wanted to separate from the family. He married a beauty and became like King Zhou of the Shang dynasty. Father, how can I not be angry? Yao Chengu smoked his cigarette, then shook his head and said, You can't say everything like that. You've also done something wrong. Sister Yi married into our family, so she's one of us now. You also know Dai Fu's taste. If that last didn't really know her place, our Dai Fu is so smart. How could he like her? Besides, didn't you hear what Su Weiji and the other said? Sister Yi is very smart. Even if she doesn't have a strategist by her side, she can do great things with her own brain. Back then, when she gave Dai Fu advice, she was even more outstanding than strategists. Why do you always have to go against such a good wife? When Yao clan heard this, she felt wronged and said, Father, why are you speaking for an outsider and ignoring your daughter's sadness? Outsider? Yao Chengu knocked his brass tobacco pipe on the edge of the Kong bed. After marrying into the family, she's one of us now. You have to treat her like your own child from the bottom of your heart. You don't have a daughter yourself, so you can just treat it as if you're raising another daughter. Isn't that good? Besides, he wasn't a child who didn't deserve love and care. If you always think like this in the future and treat Yi as an outsider, then I think Dai Fu will treat you as an outsider sooner or later. Yao clan's tears fell. That's why I'm so sad. For a woman, he treats me like this. He doesn't even remember how much I've sacrificed for him all these years. He has already forgotten how I protected him and kept him alive until now. Yao Chengu looked at his sobbing daughter, angry and distressed. All right, don't cry anymore. Let's follow Dai Fu's plan for now. I'll discuss it with your mother later and see what to do in the future. What could Yao clan do? She could only nod. She knew that Yao Chengu's words were still gentle. If she were to tell Madame Ma about her crying just now, she would definitely be scolded in the end. Percent Qin Yining held Pang Zhao's hand and walked all the way to Jinhua Park. He said in a low voice, You shouldn't be like this. It's not easy for Mother. For so many years, Mother didn't find a suitable family for you. You should be filial to Mother. I know. Pang Zhao sighed and said, I'll be filial to Mother, but I can't let her be bullied by you. I think Mother still has some love for power. She likes to manage the household, so let her manage it. In the future, we just have to close the door and live a simple life. You can manage Jinhua Park from top to bottom. At this point, Pang Xiao was a little apologetic. Sister E, I've wronged you. I also want to hand over the household to you. But that's my mother after all. I'm afraid that she'll fall ill from anger. I understand. I didn't care about managing a courtyard or a house. All I wanted was for my family to be able to live together in harmony. Mother cherishes you in her heart, so she scrutinizes me. You should understand Mother's painstaking efforts. She didn't deliberately target me. She just cares about you. Hearing Qin Yining's words, Pang Zhao's heart was both happy and moved. She couldn't help but hug Qin Yining's slender waist. When Qin Yining saw that he was about to bend over, she immediately understood what he was going to do. She blushed and pushed him, saying, "What are you doing? It's broad daylight, and we're outside." Pang Xiao only wanted to hug her, but she clearly misunderstood. Her delicate and soft body nestled in his arms. Thinking of last night's ecstasy, she became excited. "You're right. We can't do it outside. Let's go back to the room first." Qin Yining was deliberately misunderstood by him, and her face turned red with anger. "You're simply too naughty. Why didn't I realize you were so naughty before?" "I'm naughty? I'm even naughtier." Pang Xiao blew on his fingertips and went to tickle Qin Yining. Qin Yining was the most ticklish. She was chased back to the room by him and closed the door, not allowing Pang Xiao to enter. Pang Xiao leaned against the door and peeked into the room through the crack in the door. He said, "If you don't let me in, then I'm leaving. I'm going to find another girl." When Qin Yining heard him say this, she was amused and laughed. "Go ahead if you have the ability. Okay, wait here." Pang Xiao turned around and left. Qin Yining heard the sound of his footsteps from inside the room and became a little anxious. Although she knew that he was teasing her, she couldn't help but open the door and look outside. In the end, she saw Pang Xiao's smiling face. Didn't you leave?" "Yes. I heard you open the door, so I came back." His large hand held her waist, and he leaned over to kiss her bright red lips. He closed the door with his foot and back, then carried Qin Yining directly into the bedroom. Qin Yining's blushing face was completely ineffective. As a result, she didn't even have an appetite for dinner. She just lay in the middle of the soft silk satin bed and slept until it was dark. Even the mahjong tiles sent by Zhao Kuen's family were received by Ji Yun and Bing Tang. Zhao Kuen's family knew that Pang Xiao and the Yao clan had a small conflict. He even stretched his neck to inquire about the situation inside the room. Bing Tang didn't like such people, so she said, "Wang Yi and the princess consort are discussing the matters of the imperial court. They are busy at the moment. If Mama Zhao has any instructions, just let me know. I will tell the princess consort later." I won't trouble you, Mississippi. I'll leave first." Zhao Kuen's family ran away dejectedly. Bing Tang and Ji Yun looked at each other. Both of their faces were a little red, but they both burst out laughing. When it was time to return home, Qin Yining still got up early to pay his respects to Madame Ma and the Yao clan. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Today, we will return home for a short visit. We will also introduce Wang Yi to the family. We will be back in the evening." The Yao clan was still as dignified as usual, as if the unhappiness had never happened. "When you go back, send our regards to your parents. Don't forget to bring the gifts we prepared." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Yes, thank you, Mother." Madame Ma smiled and said, "We are family. There is no need to thank us. I heard that you arranged something for the servants of Jinhua Park to do this morning?" "Yes." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Granddaughter-in-law is stupid. I thought for a long time about only managing Jinhua Park. Fortunately, there are few people in the courtyard, so it is not that difficult to grasp." Chapter 427. Qin Yining smiled shyly and said, "I'm just trying to avoid being lazy." Ever since Pang Xiao humiliated the Yao clan, they insisted on not paying attention to what happened in Pang Zhao's courtyard for the entire night. They also didn't ask Zhao Kuen's family to investigate. Therefore, the Yao clan didn't know what Madame Ma said. The Yao clan originally wanted to maintain their stance, but when they saw that Madame Ma and Qin Yining hit it off so well, they couldn't help but ask, "How did Sister E arrange it?" When they asked, they felt that they would lose face, so they added, I want to learn. Qin Yining saw that the Yao clan's expression was a bit awkward. He was afraid that she would feel awkward. So he smiled and said, I just sorted out the matters in the courtyard and arranged what everyone should do. Then, I set the time for each day's work. If there's no urgent matter, they can come back at the right time to receive a token. Urgent matters are excluded. When the Yao clan heard this, they understood the knack and couldn't help but praise. This is very good. This time is a link between the previous and the next. The matters that happened in the morning and in the afternoon can all be arranged at this time. Moreover, we don't have to worry about people coming to disturb us at any time. Your method is really smart. After the Yao clan praised him, she awkwardly remembered that she seemed to be saying goodbye to her daughter-in-law. Her face showed some embarrassment. Qin Yining said shyly and intimately, Mother, you're too kind. Your daughter-in-law is just used to being lazy. Seeing the bright and sincere smile on her face, the Yao clan couldn't help but smile as well. Madame Ma was very gratified and said, I heard from Dai Fu that you have to take care of business outside. Don't tire yourself out. Yes, in terms of business, I'm just sitting there and enjoying the profits. My previous manager in Dian is very loyal and experienced. He can arrange everything properly with just one word for me. I don't need to spend too much effort. That's good, that's good. It's a blessing that you have such a loyal and devoted person to help you. But it's also your ability that can make others submit to you. I've always known that you're an outstanding girl, and it seems like I was right. It's Dai Fu's fortune to have such a virtuous wife like you. Mrs. Ma held Qin Yining in her arms and patted her back with her old hand. Although Qin Yining had a biological grandmother, she had never experienced such sincere love from her family Qin old madam, nor had she been loved so sincerely. Mrs. Ma's body also had the unique smell of an old person. It was dry, warm, sunny, and the sweet fragrance of the skincare products she used. People couldn't help but rub against her arms, feeling very warm. Grandma only knows how to praise me. I'll be proud in the future. You won't. You're a good kid, not that kind of person. Mrs. Ma patted her back again and again. She liked Qin Yining more and more. She didn't have a granddaughter. Qin Yining was 7 or 8 years younger than Pang Xiao. She had never had a delicate and soft granddaughter by her side. Now that she had such a well-behaved, smart, and beautiful granddaughter-in-law, Mrs. Ma liked her very much. Yao clan watched as Mrs. Ma hugged Qin Yining so lovingly. She recalled that when she was young, she didn't seem to have occupied her mother's embrace for so long. Her heart ached a little. She realized that she had such emotions and felt that it wasn't right. However, some emotions came from the heart and couldn't be controlled. For example, her precious son had married a wife, and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to keep her position. Mother. At this moment, Pang Xiao, who had changed into a new dark blue brocade robe, strode in. He saw Yao clan from where he entered the door, so he smiled and bowed first. Yao clan saw that Pang Xiao and her weren't estranged and were still as close as before. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, Dai Fu is here. Yes, I just prepared some gifts. Today, when I go to my father-in-law's house, I have to change the way I address you. As they spoke, they arrived in front of Yao Qinggu and Mrs. Ma. Pang Xiao still smiled and bowed. Yao Qinggu called Pang Xiao to his side and asked him in a low voice what gifts he had prepared. After listening to Pang Xiao's explanation, he felt that it was appropriate. After thinking for a while, he instructed, you should also prepare some small fortune bags with gold and silver shells inside. If you meet a junior or a peer of the same generation, it won't be ugly to use them as a greeting gift if they need them. Pang Xiao naturally prepared it, but he forgot to mention it just now. Hearing Yao Qinggu's reminder, he nodded obediently. Ah, this is ready-made. I'll bring it with me when I go back. The room was filled with joy and harmony, as if the previous unhappiness had never happened. Mrs. Ma was satisfied and urged Pang Xiao, if you're ready, then get ready to set off. Uncle should be here soon. Returning home in 3 days required the clan brothers to pick them up. Qin Yining smiled and said, I think he should be here soon. As soon as he finished speaking, someone outside replied, Uncle is at the gate. Go quickly. Be careful on the road. Send our greetings to the in-laws. Mrs. Ma gently patted the back of Qin Yining's hand. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. He followed Pang Xiao and left Pine Crane Hall. In front of the gate of the prince's mansion, Qin Yu and Qin Han were discussing whether they should go in and greet the old madam of the prince's mansion. As they were talking, they saw Qin Yining and Pang Xiao coming out side by side. Two brothers-in-law. Pang Xiao was not a wastrel and took the initiative to greet them. Originally, Qin Yu and Qin Han were a little afraid of him because of his high status and reputation. They were worried that he married Qin Yining for revenge. Now that they saw his warm smile and that Qin Yining was fine, the two brothers felt relieved. Their attitude towards Pang Xiao was also much more natural. Qin Han said, "Brother-in-law, shall we set off now?" Pang Xiao was very happy with this title. It made him happier than calling him Wang Yi or Elder. At this time, the carriage had already rushed out of the mansion. Pang Xiao first helped Qin Yining into the carriage. He was worried that she would be uncomfortable and almost carried her up. Qin Yining found that his hand on her waist exerted a little force. She immediately realized his intention and pushed him away with a blush. They exchanged glances. So many people are watching. Pang Xiao had no choice but to let go. After Bingtang and Ji Yin got into the carriage, Pang Xiao took the reins and got on the horse. Qin Han and Qin Yu saw everything and felt even more relieved. The two of them also got on their horses and chatted with Pang Xiao along the way as they led the way in front of the carriage. Qin Yining sat in the carriage and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. The last time they came out, she was still combing a girl's hair. Now, she was combing a woman's hair. Bing Tang and Ji Yun were a little worried when they saw Qin Yining frowning slightly. They saw what the Yao clan did in the mansion these 2 days and felt wronged for Qin Yining in their hearts. Fortunately, Wang Yi did not tie up his mother. Otherwise, Qin Yining would feel even more wronged. They went all the way to the main street where the family Qin lived. As soon as they turned the corner, they saw the Qin mansion's gate open wide. Qin Huayan, who was wearing a round-neck long robe, and the Sun clan, who were craning their necks in anticipation, were standing in front of the gate. When they saw Qin Han, Qin Yu, and Pang Xiao turn around the corner on their horses, the Sun clan couldn't help but quickly go forward to welcome them. Pang Xiao and the others quickly got off their horses. Pang Xiao came forward and bowed, "Mother-in-law." After hearing this familiar address again, the Sun clan was no longer sure if Pang Xiao would be sincere to Qin Yining, so they just nodded and said, "You're back. Quickly go in." The carriage stopped. Qin Yining lifted the curtain and smiled. "Mother, why did you come out?" Sun clan quickly took her hand and helped her get off the carriage. "Your cousin went out, so I came out. I can't stay at home. Quickly go home with mother." As she spoke, she held Qin Yining's arm and walked towards the mansion. Pang Xiao came to Qin Huayuan and bowed, "Father-in-law." Qin Huayuan smiled and nodded, then turned and said, "Let's go. Let's go home first." When Qin Huayuan and his wife received them, the doorman had already rushed into the mansion to pass on the message. The family Qin's mansion wasn't big. After walking a few steps, the group of servants arrived at the main room of the inner residence. The old madam was wearing a maroon-red robe with a round neck. She had specially combed her hair and inserted a jade hairpin. She was sitting cross-legged on the Kong bed by the window. Second old master, second old madam, third old master, as well as the brothers and sisters in the family, were all gathered together. When the old madam entered, everyone smiled and greeted her politely. Mammy Qin placed 2 brocade mats on the ground. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao went forward and kowtowed to the old madam. "Greetings to the old madam. Your granddaughter kowtows to you." Pang Xiao also said greetings to the old madam. The old madam's heart was surging with emotions. She was so excited that her hands were trembling. The person kowtowing to her was the Prince Zhongshuan of the Dezhou dynasty. He was the murderous spirit who killed people like scything flax. He was the scholar of Wuying Palace who had the power to overturn the imperial court. If she didn't have a granddaughter like Qin Yining who had the ability to become a Wangfei, how could she receive such a greeting? "You may rise." The old madam forced a smile and ordered Mammy Chin to give a greeting gift. It was a high-quality inkstone. Pang Xiao smiled and ordered someone to accept it. Qin Yining introduced Pang Xiao to his second uncle, second aunt, third uncle, eldest cousin brother Qin Yu, second cousin brother Qin Han, second cousin brother Meng, fifth cousin brother Qin Xian, eighth cousin sister Qin Baoning, 10th cousin brother Qin Rong, 11th cousin brother Qin Zong, and cousin nephew Qin Yuzhen. Pang Xiao greeted them one by one. The elders greeted them, gave them greeting gifts, and then took them back. Their peers smiled and gave them greeting gifts. In particular, the greeting gift for the young cousin was a bag of golden beans. The second aunt was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Qin Yining only skipped Qin Huining's introduction. Qin Huining lowered her head and stood in the corner. She hated that she couldn't find a hole to hide in. She really shouldn't have come to this kind of occasion. But if she didn't come, it would be disrespectful to Pang Xiao and Qin Yining. She would be humiliating herself if she came. Now that she had been neglected for so long, she had long regretted it. If she hadn't targeted Qin Yining in the beginning and didn't use those methods, she wouldn't have lost the pity and sympathy of her father and mother. Even if she was an adopted daughter, how could a father like Qin Huaiyuan, who had such a high position and valued friendship, treat her unfairly? But there was no medicine for regret in this world. Chapter 428. Although Second Tang's sister-in-law had good intentions, when everyone in the family heard this, they all looked at her with slight condemnation and dissatisfaction. Qin Han always knew that although his wife wasn't a bad person, there were some things that couldn't be resolved. He couldn't help but tug on her sleeve. Only then did Second Tang Sa realize that Qin Huining's status was awkward, and he didn't get along well with Qin Yining. No one in the family introduced her to him, so why would she do such a thing? Second Tang Sa smiled awkwardly, took 2 steps back, and didn't say anything. However, Qin Huining smiled gratefully at Second Tang Sa. He finally had a way to speak. He bent his knees and greeted Pang Xiao. "Hello, brother-in-law." "Brother-in-law?" Pang Xiao looked at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, "No need to be so courteous." Out of courtesy to Qin Huaiyuan, Pang Xiao gave Qin Huining a greeting gift compared to the other siblings in the family. Although Qin Huining called him brother-in-law, Pang Xiao had a high status and power. His actions were considered appropriate because of his status. When Qin Huaiyuan saw Pang Xiao's actions, he was very satisfied. He thought that Pang Xiao was really very attentive to Qin Yining. Matriarch now had such a high status and power grandson-in-law. The more she looked at him, the more satisfied she was. However, she still didn't dare to meet Pang Xiao's eyes. She felt that his gaze was too sharp and made people feel terrified when they met his gaze. After chatting for a while, Qin Huaiyun, second old master, and third old master invited Pang Xiao outside to talk. They wanted to leave some space for the womenfolk. Seeing that Pang Xiao and the others had left, the Sun Clan immediately grabbed Qin Yining's hand and went inside to have a private talk, completely ignoring the matriarch's expression. In the Sun Clan's bedroom, Qin Yining and his mother sat side by side. The Sun Clan member asked in a low voice, "How does Wang Yi treat you?" Qin Yining's ears turned red when he heard that. He coughed and said, "Very good." The mother of the Sun Clan carefully sized up Qin Yining. When she saw her bashful smile that could not be concealed, she said with satisfaction, "Excellent. From what I see, although Wang Ye's temper is not very good, he is not someone who would abuse his wife. Those who fight on the battlefield are more or less domineering. As long as you follow his wishes and listen to his arrangements, I believe Wang Yi will not treat you unfairly." "Mother, you're right. I'll do as you say. Wang Yi treats me very well. What about your mother-in-law? And what about the 2 elders in the residence?" The Sun Clan asked worriedly. When Qin Yining thought of Madame Ma's protection of her, her heart warmed. She smiled and said, "Wang Ye's maternal grandparents are very gentle and kind people. When my maternal grandmother was young, she was a chivalrous woman in the pugilistic world. Her temper is very straightforward, and she also dotes on me very much. My maternal grandfather's temper is soft but he is a resourceful old man. He also really likes me. What about your mother-in-law? The Sun Clan member held Qin Yining's hand and asked, did she ask you to set up rules in her house? Qin Yining knew that the Sun Clan was someone who had suffered under her mother-in-law. She had also seen with her own eyes how the Sun Clan set rules in front of the old matriarch. She also saw how the old matriarch made things difficult for the Sun Clan after the Sun Clan's accident. As a mother, how could she bear to let her child suffer the same pain again? Qin Yining held the Sun Clan member's arm and shook it. Mother, don't worry. My mother-in-law and grandmother are very dutiful people. Just as you said, although Wang Yi is domineering, he won't bully his daughter for no reason. He will even support her. Although my mother-in-law has some ulterior motives, which mother won't worry that her son will forget her after he gets married. These are all understandable. Life isn't lived in a day. There is still a long way to go. No matter what, it will get better and better. Hearing Qin Yining's words, the Sun Clan member was very happy. She was also full of hope for the future. The Sun Clan member was very clear in her heart. Her talent had always been very ordinary, and she had the temperament of a young miss raised in a duke's residence. The old matriarch was also a snobbish person. Therefore, she no longer looked forward to a harmonious mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. However, Qin Yining was different. Qin Yining's life was still very long. In the future, her life in the prince's residence would be her main focus. The prince's residence was already very small in number. There were only a few people in the family. If there was someone who didn't like Qin Yining, then her life in the future would be difficult. Ever since Qin Yining got married, the Sun Clan member hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days. She kept thinking about it over and over in her mind. She always felt that her daughter had gone to someone else's home. From a treasure in her palm, she had become a pile of rubble that could be discarded on the ground. In the past, she didn't treat Qin Yining well. Not long after they reconciled, her daughter got married. There weren't many opportunities for her daughter to be happy. She didn't even have the time to properly compensate Qin Yining. The Sun Clan was really worried that Qin Yining's life in her in-laws' home wouldn't be good. Although Qin Yining couldn't completely understand the Sun Clan's mentality of compensation, she could still sense it. She was afraid that after they returned, the Sun Clan would still let their imaginations run wild. Thus, she simply told the Sun Clan about the matters in the prince's residence. Wang Yi is busy with official business, but he can always find time to accompany me. Mother-in-law is very kind. When she saw that I was about to start learning how to be a steward, she arranged for a respectable servant by her side to be ordered around by me. She was afraid that my words wouldn't have any weight in the prince's residence. Mother-in-law also treats me like her own granddaughter. She always holds my hand and talks to me. She's much more intimate than our family's old matriarch. The prince's residence is very big, but there aren't many people in the family. Thus, the residence is very spacious and safe. The servants don't have to squeeze together. The Sun Clan carefully listened to Qin Yining talk about the prince's residence. The more they listened, the more relaxed they became. In the end, they nodded repeatedly and said, "Your father has always been capable. The marriage that he agreed to definitely won't be wrong." Qin Yining heard this and laughed. Mother is so protective of father. When I return, I will definitely tell father. I won't let down mother's sincerity. The Sun Clan's old face reddened when she heard this. She couldn't help but push Qin Yining, "You little girl." While the mother and daughter were whispering in the room, Pang Xiao and Qin Huayuan had already gone to the study room in the outer courtyard alone. Qin Huayuan sat down on the warm Kong bed by the window. Pang Xiao respectfully bowed to Qin Huayuan again. "Father-in-law, this son-in-law kowtows to you." Qin Huayuan supported him with a smile. "Quickly get up. We're all family. Why are you so polite?" "No, father-in-law, you must accept my bow. Actually, I have long wanted to thank you. Thank you for allowing me and sister E to be together. It's just that it's inconvenient to talk outside. I haven't found this opportunity." "Quickly get up." Qin Huayuan helped Pang Xiao up and said with a smile, "You are an open-minded person. I should be the one apologizing to you for what happened back then." Pang Xiao heard this and quickly shook his head. "Father-in-law, No matter what the people outside say, you must listen to me. Back then, you were dying and my father was from Beiji. You were originally standing on opposing sides. Naturally, you did things based on your own abilities. Furthermore, although your plan to sow discord back then was beautiful, the incapable ruler of Beiji had long disliked my father. He was worried that he would gather troops and rebel. That was why he found an excuse to get rid of him. Therefore, this matter is the result of many reasons as time goes on. It has nothing to do with your plan to sow discord. Furthermore, even if it was really because of the plan to sow discord, there was no other way. From the beginning, I have never vented my anger on you. If I did, why would I look for Sister E a few years ago? A few years ago, Qin Huaiyuan keenly caught the main point. Pang Xiao nodded and said, I heard about it from the aide left behind by my father. They schemed to swap Sister E. My father's bodyguard said that they brought an orphan from Yangsheng Hall. However, that aide said that she was not an orphan. She was bought with money. In short, after they swapped Sister E, they threw away the swaddling clothes. Later, when they investigated further, they found that Sister E was brought home by Madame Liu. At that time, I was 14 or 15 years old. I heard my father's people talk about Sister E. At that time, I felt that she was very innocent, so I went to Liang City to look for her. Pang Xiao told Qin Huaiyuan about how he saw Qin Yining being pushed to the ground by the shop assistant in Liang City. However, she stubbornly did not cry. He followed behind her and watched as she went to buy steamed buns for her adoptive mother. He saw how she was so strong that she did not look like a 7-year-old child. Pang Xiao recalled carefully. In the end, he said that he deliberately kept some money. Then, he said regretfully, unfortunately, when I went back next year, Sister Yi's adoptive mother had already passed away. I never found her again. When I first gave her money, I did not have much money. At that time, I had just joined the army. Most of my father's aides were just using me half-heartedly. I did not have any money or real power. At that time, if I had 30% of my ability now, Sister E would not have had to suffer so many years in the mountains. Qin Huaiyuan did not speak. He listened calmly to Pang Xiao's story. In the end, he said, so you two were already destined to be together. It seems that all of this is fate. The money you gave me back then was equivalent to saving Sister Yi's life. That is why you two are husband and wife now. Pang Xiao's ears turned red. He muttered, perhaps it is fate. Qin Huaiyuan said with a smile, I don't have any requirements for you. I just hope that you can treat Sister E well. She's a child who has suffered a lot. She has never enjoyed any good fortune. When she returned home, she suffered so much because of me. I cannot accompany her for the rest of her life, but you can. In the future, I will entrust Sister E to you. When Qin Huaiyuan finished speaking, he was very serious. Pang Xiao stood up and bowed. Yes, father-in-law, don't worry. I will definitely treat Sister E well. Both of them were very happy with this conversation. After talking about private matters, Qin Huaiyuan started talking about official matters. The injury caused by the turning over of the Earth Dragon should be very serious. Qin Huaiyuan directly told his son-in-law what he had analyzed. Your Majesty's internal funds are empty. When he urgently needs money, he will definitely speed up the search for that treasure. Moreover, I suspect that in order to raise money, Your Majesty will probably assign tasks to the ministers in the imperial court one by one. The small yellow croakers you gave to Sister E that day were too eye-catching. If Your Majesty cares about these things and asks you to borrow money, what will you do? That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.